content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you.
All right, man. I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me now? Hopefully you can hear me now. If you can hear me now, put a 1 in the chat, and that would be helpful to me. Yeah, press 1 if you hear me. You should be able to hear me now. Okay, cool. Man, it's always some technical shit going on, man, when you update your computer. And I'm sorry, I updated my computer and it created some, inconsistencies in how everything starts up and boots up. I apologize for that. What I did was I already went through the list where I basically shouted out all of the members. Okay, man, I'm having technical difficulties. I don't know why things are shutting down, but I rebooted my computer, updated some things. And so sometimes when you do that, man, it creates difficulties or whatever the case may be. So bear with me, man. I apologize for the inconvenience and for the sound dropping off. You should be able to hear me again. I assume that you can hear me now. So at any rate, if it drops out again, I'm pretty sure you'll let me know. Okay. But what I wanted to do is to continue reading from this text. And I'm going to have to keep my eye out from time to time on this program to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. All right. So anyway, I've been reading from this text. You already know what the name of the text is. It's called Dark Ghettos, Injustice, Dissent, and Reform. And it's written by Tommy Shelby. And I thought it'd be interesting to go through and read it because, a lot of men in this space have things to say about the ghetto and people from the ghetto and the conditions and the social and moral arguments related to the ghetto. But it's not very sophisticated. In this way, I think, at least you could have a clear elucidation of terms and, just precise definitions. And you can disagree with the text. All I'm trying to do is provide the framework to have a more intelligent conversation as opposed to just one that's based upon common sense. Because a lot of times common sense, when you reflect on the wisdom that is pertained within the phrase or the understanding of it, it really isn't, it's not really intelligent at all. Okay. So having said all that, man, let me get right to this, man. Let me get right to where I want to be with this. If I can. So I want to capture this screen and read this text to you. I want to make sure that I got everything like I want it. I want it in read mode. Okay, I want it in full screen. And I want to make it bigger than this. Okay. I'm just making sure I got everything set up like I want it to be set up before I start. All right. So I think everything is where I need it to be. Okay, cool. So look, I've already read the introduction to this book. And now I'm going to read to you part of chapter 1. I got to break this down into chunks. If I try to read it all, it's gonna take too long, and it's gonna be, it's just gonna be too overwhelming. So I'm gonna read the first part of chapter 1, which deals with the subject matter of justice or injustice, and it is contained within another part called Part 1, which is liberty, equality, and fraternity. I mean, those slogans should be familiar if you know anything about the French Revolution. But so yeah, we're gonna read part of the first chapter. I'm only gonna go to perhaps maybe page 29. Okay, that's as far as I'm going with this tonight, if I even get that far. Okay. So I've read the introduction, and I told you what I'm about to read now. And this is a continuation of the kind of tradition of scholarship that was initiated by Kenneth Clark. I mean, Kenneth Clark is the person who wrote the book, The Dark Ghettos, and BGS has been covering this, some of the things that he's had to say, and how it eventually culminated into the Moynihan Report. And also, it's just, you know, he's the person that devised the Dahl test as well. So Kenneth Clark, okay? So this is a continuation of that tradition, okay? So here we go, man. Okay, so this is chapter 1. And he says, basically, let's talk about injustice, okay? Before offering arguments for my central claims, I define a few key terms and elucidate the content of some pertinent principles. Specifically, this chapter outlines 1, a basic framework for asking and answering questions about social justice. A framework that, while not politically neutral, is ideologically capacious. So he's basically saying, I'm not being neutral here. However, the idea that I'm putting forth, the questions that I'm asking about social justice are ideologically capacious, okay? It can contain a lot. The chapter also defends an account of racism, distinguishing its 3 fundamental forms and making explicit the moral considerations that undergird apt charges of racism. It explains what discrimination is and what makes it wrong, and it provides an interpretation of equal opportunity that highlights how that ideal serves as a basis for condemning urban poverty and class-based stratification. In addition, this chapter specifies the relevant notion of ghetto, which, though not uncontested, identifies the primary subject of the book. By combining these ideas with some basic and widely known empirical facts, I show that many blacks residing in ghettos in the U.S. today are not simply disadvantaged, but unjustly disadvantaged. Okay, so you can already see he's going to say that, like, the ghetto is in and of itself a condition in which people live, and they're disadvantaged, but not only are they that, they're unjustly disadvantaged, okay? And he's going to offer all the arguments that you see to the contrary, because some people believe that people in the ghetto deserve to be there. So he covers those kind of arguments, okay? In depth. This is not like some bullshit critique, right? This is in depth, okay? I'm just letting you know it's pretty exhaustive, okay? So I just want to make sure. Let me make this smaller because it keeps getting some funny kind of action here with moving up and down this thing here, man. Let me just keeps moving in ways that I don't want it to move. Anyway, hopefully you can still see that. Then he goes on to say there's another section called Reciprocity and the Basic Structure of Society, okay? Okay. He goes on to say liberal egalitarian philosophers disagree, sometimes sharply, about the precise content of political morality. And the question then is, well, what's liberal egalitarianism? Like, liberal egalitarian philosophers, what does that even mean? And so ultimately what it means, and I got my little cliff notes here that I've made for myself, but a liberal egalitarian theory of justice basically combines values. It combines the value of equality, personal freedom or negative liberty, and it also tries to combine it with the notion of personal responsibility. So you got equality, freedom, and personal responsibility, and how can those coexist justly and fairly within the same social body, right? So anyway, he says basically liberal egalitarians disagree, sometimes sharply, about the precise content of political morality. For the most part, the arguments I put forth don't turn on these philosophical fine points, and the theory I develop could fit comfortably within a number of liberal egalitarian frameworks. So he talks about various forms of liberal egalitarianism, such as, for instance, justice as fairness, left libertarianism, luck egalitarianism, and the human capabilities approach and civic republicanism. Okay, so just as a sidebar, so you know, justice as fairness is a Rawlsian form of liberal egalitarianism where the principles of justice for the basic structure of a society are what take place because of the original agreement that citizens form or develop. They are the principles that free and rational persons who are looking out for their own self-interest, what kind of principles they would pick in an initial position of equality if they were going to basically develop a society from scratch. So what would you agree to in an initial or an original position where you're going to agree about what the principles of the society are going to be like? I'm not going to go into depth about what this is, but just understand that it's a Rawlsian ideal, okay? You got left libertarianism, okay? Now, if you don't know what left libertarianism is, it is a type of libertarianism where individual freedom and social equality are given equal weight, okay? Then you have the idea of luck egalitarianism, okay? And luck egalitarianism is a view in which justice demands that if there's differences in how people are well off, that should be determined by the responsible choices that people make and not luck, not unfortunate circumstances or things that lie outside of the domain of people's choices, okay? So how you fare should be dependent upon your personal choices or your responsible choices, okay? There's also the human capabilities approach. And this approach, is an approach created by a political thinker. His name is Amartya Sen. And it basically has two normative claims. The first claim is that the freedom to achieve well-being is the first and primary issue that human beings contend with in cultures, okay? Well-being is the primary end, okay? And second, that well-being should be understood in terms of your capacities and your functionings. And basically, capabilities are the doings and beings that people can achieve if they choose. Their opportunity to do or be such things as being well-nourished, getting married, being educated, and traveling, and so on and so forth. Functionings are capabilities that have actually been realized, right? So there's a whole literature based upon the capabilities approach. So he's basically, and then there's civic republicanism, which I just so happen to think is one of the best forms of liberal egalitarianism, if I would even consider it to be that. But it's a tradition of political thought that says that there's a connection between individual freedom and your participation in politics, such that, you're actually not just looking out for yourself, but you're looking out for the best of the entire culture or society at large, okay? So he's basically saying my viewpoint, my theory here is capacious enough to hold or contain all of these viewpoints, okay? That's what he's saying, okay? Then he goes on to say, besides the non-consequentialism mentioned earlier, and if you want to know what Non-consequentialism is basically a rebuff against utilitarianism, okay? That's all you need to know if you want to even know that much. But anyway, he says, there are two ideas found in John Rawls's approach to thinking about justice that not all liberal egalitarians endorse, but that are fundamental to the conclusions I defend. And then he goes on to talk about what those are. So Rawls has suggested that if we were to conceive of society as a system of social cooperation over time and took an impartial view of what the distribution of benefits and burdens of participating in this scheme ought to be, we would arrive at conclusions about what social justice requires that warrant our rational assent. Now, there's some people who just don't think that society is about social cooperation over time. So, I mean, if you don't think that way, then you're already at a disagreement with, this thinker, with Tommy Shelby, okay? And again, Tommy Shelby is a Rawlsian. That's just what he is. And I know a lot of this stuff is abstract, but believe me, it gets more concrete later. But he's just laying out, in his eyes, what are the justice claims or the ways of perceiving justice such that he can begin to evaluate what's actually happening in the ghetto, okay? So he's just laying out and defining terms. Okay. So basically he says that society is a system of social cooperation. Okay. And the idea of society as a fair system of cooperation is a moral notion to be used in the evaluation of institutional arrangements. Social justice is constituted by the legitimate claims and responsibilities individuals have within a fair, overall social arrangement. Thought about in this way, justice is a matter of reciprocity between persons who regard each other as equals. Taking this approach to questions of social justice is particularly apt, it works really well, he says, when considering criticisms often made against the ghetto poor. And let's face it, there are a ton of criticisms made against the ghetto poor. A lot. A whole bunch of criticisms that are made against the ghetto poor, okay? So anyway, he says, thinking about reciprocity or a just scheme of social cooperation, right, provides a framework to settling whether the urban poor are doing their fair share in upholding the system of cooperation and whether they are receiving their fair share due to them as equal participants in this system. Reciprocity as a central value in liberal political morality is the primary normative standpoint from which I reflect on family structure, joblessness, and crime in ghetto neighborhoods. So already, I wish I can get to a point where I can make some changes to this thing. It won't let me edit at the current moment for some reason, but it's okay. So yeah, reciprocity is the central liberal value that he's utilizing in order to reflect on family, occupations, and crime, okay, in ghetto neighborhoods. Rawls also emphasizes the paramount significance of the basic structure for social justice. And this is important, right? And shout out to Fear the None. Appreciate that, sir. Thank you for your donation there, man. And please support the Green Gorilla channel. I'm giving you education right here. This is important. I mean, I know a lot of us like to, watch the hellacious and the juicy stuff, but sometimes that stuff, man, is just filler material. This is important, man, especially if we're talking about what's going on in the ghetto. Because basically, quite frankly, the arguments that we're making about women are partly arguments that we're making about ghetto culture, but it's a larger conversation about justice, okay? And it's time to frame these conversations responsibly and meticulously instead of with just emotion and by means of common sense. It's time to become sophisticated in the way we tackle these issues. So, having said that, so what is the basic structure of social justice, okay? The basic structure, he says, is composed, and this is also Rawlsian, okay? This is also Rawlsian. And shout out to BGS. I'm doing this at some point. I'm going to have BGS, if he feels like it, to come up and have a conversation about this, but not now, because these are preliminary, it's time to just lay out the terms and definitions first. And then when he gets to the concrete issues related to the ghetto, then I can bring people like BGS in, whoever else wants to join. But I just want to get the definitions out first. And then after that, to get to the meat, okay? But anyway, so the basic structure of a society is composed of the major political, economic, and social institutions that make fruitful social cooperation possible and that apportion the benefits and burdens of such cooperation. So what are the major political, economic, and social institutions that exist within a society, and how do they spread benefits and burdens across the society, which he considers to be a form of joint social cooperation, right? Within the political realm, the basic structure includes, so this is the political horn of the basic structure. The political horn includes the Constitution, which specifies the basic rights and duties of citizenship, the organization of government institutions, and the legal system, including the system of criminal law. Okay, so that's the political structure, the basic structure. Then there's the economic realm, where you have markets, firms, banks, and state agencies that regulate and govern the production of goods and services. And also the system of private and public ownership that determines rights and responsibilities with respect to goods and resources. And in the social domain, the basic structure consists of families and educational institutions, as these ensure that children are cared for and taught and what they need to know so that they might eventually become equal participants in the system of social cooperation. So the basic structure, again, consists of various components: political, economic, and social, okay? And you can go back and look at it again and see the breakdown. Anyway, he goes on to say a well-organized and impartially administered basic structure may not be all that is needed to achieve or maintain social justice. Private citizens attending to their civic duties have to do their part as well. Yet it should be clear why Rawls chooses to focus on the basic structure. Its effects on the freedom and life prospects of individuals are immense and wide-ranging, and these effects have an impact on the quality of individuals' lives from birth until death. Because each of us must make a life for ourselves under the dominion of the basic structure of some society or other, we each have a legitimate claim that these institutions treat us fairly. We live our individual lives not in isolation, but with others in society, where these complex social relations are mediated by an institutional framework into which we are born. The basic structure fixes a person's initial position within society. Some individuals will be more and some less favored in the distribution of benefits and burdens, of liberties, duties, opportunities, and material advantages of this association over the course of their lives, depending on their starting places within the social arrangement. Now, that's a lot to take in, but understand this, it is essentially Rawlsian. I've done a show committed to Rawls. If you want to understand Rawls more deeply, you can go back and look at that show, or it's a host of shows that you can find all over the internet, on YouTube specifically, that detail, the outline or adumbrate Rawls' political philosophy, okay? But I mean, the whole point is that we live under the domain of a basic structure, and we live amongst other persons within it, this structure, and the structure is going to fix your position, your initial starting point in society. If you're born to a single mother on welfare in the ghetto, that's going to be different than if you're born to a married woman who lives in, Beverly Hills. You're going to have a different fixed point. It's going to be a different set of opportunities that you have, material advantages that you have. There's going to be a different amount of benefits and burdens that you have to endure related to that initial starting point. But that's just how this is how life is. Okay? This is how the game is. Okay? Also, let me say this. I want to give Aaron Peters a shout out. I want to give Felicia Gray a shout out. And please support the Green Gorilla channel. Also, I want to shout out some people who hit me. Broman3 sent me $10 for the BGS tax. So shout out to Broman. Shout out to Samuel L. Calvin and Greg Wilson. Shout out to them. So appreciate your help and your support. Okay. Yeah, if you're born on the north side, it's different than if you're born in Creve Coeur. It's different, man. Okay? So this is what's being said, right? Now, basically, none of this though means, and this is the author speaking, none of this means that a person's life prospects are completely determined by the particular social circumstances into which he or she is born. So this doesn't determine how you end up, okay? A person's choices, the good or bad will of others. Now, this is important to understand. So your choices, along with the good or the bad will of other individuals, and brute luck will naturally have a significant impact as well. Okay. Now, this is self-evident to me. You're not completely determined by your social circumstances, but other factors are going to come into play to determine how well you do inside of the basic structure of any given culture. What you choose to do, how others treat you, and luck is going to have an impact on how you fare. Okay? Like, say, for example, somebody might be born handicapped. That's a matter of luck. Now, if you do something reckless and you become handicapped as a result of your recklessness, that's a whole different matter altogether. But to be born handicapped, let's say, for example, you're born with no legs. That's luck. That's going to have an impact on how you fare and the quality of your life in any given society in which you're born. If you're born 6'3", but nobody's born 6'3", but if you're born and the result of your genetic makeup is that you eventually become tall, then there's an advantage that you have on that account that's based on luck, not by the process of anything that you've chosen to do. Some people are born pretty. Some people are just beautiful. Nobody who's beautiful, I mean, unless they go and they do all kinds of reconstructive surgery or whatnot. I mean, most people are not born and have a choice about how they're born in terms of what they look like eventually. Now, there are things you can do to modify your body. You can work out. You can maximize your beauty potential. But I mean, let's just face it, man. Some people are just born beautiful, and that's not a result of anything that they've done. It's just the luck of the draw. You're fortunate. Okay? So anyway, he goes on to say, and of course, in a liberal democratic regime, each should take primary responsibility for how his or her life goes. So you can see already what he's not doing is he's not saying, okay, well, we're going to make excuses for ghetto poor people. That's not the goal here. The goal is not to try to make excuses for anybody. But the goal is to look at what people are actually responsible for and what society at large is responsible for. Because society at large also has duties. It has a duty to treat citizens, regardless as to what starting point they have, because nobody's responsible for the starting point. It's responsible, society is, for ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to enjoy the benefits from joint social cooperation. At least that's how a liberal egalitarian would see it, okay? But at the same time, each individual's life's prospects are profoundly shaped by a social structure that he or she could not have chosen. So you don't get to have control over the social structure that you're born into. Moreover, it is largely through institutions, governments, schools, firms, markets, and families that social, natural, and fortuitous contingencies impact our individual life chances. Therefore, the social arrangement we participate in should be organized to give each of us a fair shot to flourish. We possess that fair chance only when the social scheme disadvantages us in ways that can be justified on impartial grounds. So if there are any disadvantages that people have, they should be made such that they can be justified. The disadvantages that you have should be impartially justified on impartial grounds. But this is Rawlsian. This is like an interpolation of the difference principle. I'm not going to get into all of that, but just know that this is what it is. And shout out to Shocks. Appreciate that. Appreciate the donation, sir. Appreciate it. It helps. Okay. Shout out to Charles Faulkner, man. You've been derelict, man. I've been looking for you. But anyway, I holler, I roll with you, dog. Woo. But anyway, one benefit of focusing on the basic structure of U.S. society is that it can help us avoid the pitfalls of the medical model approach to ghetto poverty. In particular, its status quo bias and unjust advantage blind spot. Okay, so shout out to Charles Faulkner. I'm not trying to, scold you or anything like that. I was missing you for one of the shows that we was doing with Sanddog and Nameless Protagonist. But holler at me later, bro. We gotta catch up. But at any rate, this section here is in reference to the introduction where he talked about the medical model approach to ghetto poverty. So that approach to solving ghetto poverty has to do with someone examining an objective feature of ghetto life and then coming in and trying to make an assessment and to cure what's going on there by a treatment plan that maybe perhaps doesn't take into consideration whether or not the institutions of the society are fair, or whether or not the person who's making such assessments and proclamations about the problems inherent in the ghetto, right? Whether or not they're not even acknowledging that there is such thing as advantage blindness. Some people don't know that they have advantages, or don't perceive themselves as having advantages that are unjust. They're not a matter of justice. Okay? So go back and look at the first, installment of this series that I've done to see what that, means in detail or in depth. Okay? But anyway, the background social arrangement is kept constantly in view, where it can be scrutinized for fairness and treated as a potential target of reform or even revolution if things are bad enough. And this is what status quo bias prevents from happening, okay? Looking and scrutinizing the social arrangement consistently, okay? So if you got status quo bias, you probably won't do that. And he also makes a reference to unjust advantage blind spots, where he says the illegitimate privileges of the advantage in the social scheme are highlighted alongside the burdens of the oppressed. Like one can argue, even recently, Trump came out and said something like this: look, I know the system is fucked up because I don't pay as much taxes as the average man. But one can argue it's an unjust privilege for people who are wealthy as fuck not to pay less taxes than the poorest people in the society. One can argue that is ridiculous. And that's an example of an unjust advantage. Hold on, man. Hold on for 1 second, man. Hold on, man. Hold on. Sorry about the disruption, man. Somebody, I'm about to have groceries delivered to the house. Anyway, so I had to get it straight. They don't have my vegetables, man, which upsets me, but it is what it is. Anyway, so we were just having a conversation about background conditions and to constantly keep an eye on them. Because if you don't do that, then maybe perhaps there's some status quo injustice that obtains, and then you're making unfair assessments about the status and the morality of people who are disadvantaged, okay? And then also, there might be illegitimate privileges that people have based upon the social scheme that is unfair itself, okay? So anyway, so he says the illegitimate privileges of the advantaged in the social scheme are highlighted alongside the burdens of the oppressed. Centering public discussions of ghetto poverty on the injustice of the institutional scheme as a whole is one way to highlight the need for the advantaged in the scheme to justify their privileged position to those at the bottom of the well. Okay? So, the next thing he goes on to do is to talk about racism, okay? And, my philosophers always define things. It's a pretty exhaustive definition of racism to me. There's some things missing, a little bit is missing, but I think for the most part, I think he gets it right. Now, how he responds to racism, he's going to differ from me to a certain extent. Maybe not all the way, though. Maybe there's something that, is contained within his words that would match up to my sentiments or my idea about how to combat it and what racism inheres in. But I have to see, because I haven't read the entirety of this text. I've read most of it, but I haven't read all of it scrutinizingly. So some of the, things are going to be new to me but not this section because I've definitely read this section. Okay. So let's talk about racism, because racism exists, and some people say, "Oh well, you know, it's been so long ago," and I don't. To be honest, I don't think people really understand what racism is. And you know, there's a recent crop of black people, man, who come up and all they do is say racism really is not a factor anymore. Like it just doesn't exist anymore. And to me, that's just absolute nonsense, man. That's crazy. I mean, you got people out here like writing manifestos about how they don't like people and how they despise them. And then people, well, racism really isn't a factor. Really? I'm astounded by, you know, but not really though. Anyway, he goes on to say this, and this is the longest section of this chapter. I might have to take a pause when these people deliver the food, but I'm going to get through the entirety, not the whole chapter, but at least this section, racism, ideological, institutional, and structural. I'm going to get through this, okay? I'm going to plod my way through this, okay? In the U.S. today, there would appear to be a consensus that racism and discrimination are wrong. Few seem to be inclined to describe themselves as racist or to be openly in favor of discriminating against others. Now, I mean, just because somebody doesn't want themselves described as a racist doesn't mean that they aren't. Okay? Some may in private have a great incentive to define themselves as racist, but not in the public, okay? I'm just thinking about the Klan. Now, some people in the Klan don't have a problem with revealing their identities or whatever the case may be, but I mean, let's just face it. You know what the hood is for. Anyway, the trouble is there doesn't appear to be much agreement on just what constitutes racism and discrimination. And even where people do seem to agree that the label racism or discrimination applies in a particular case, there's no reason to think that they attach the same normative significance to these terms, or that they value, they attach the same value to the terms, okay? That is, that they have honed in on exactly the same wrong-making feature or moral principle. Some of the conclusions of this book rely on these two notions, so it is important to be explicit about how I intend them to be understood and why I construe their meanings as I do. So in other words, what he's doing is, he's just saying, look, here's my definition of racism and discrimination. Here's how they need to be defined, okay, in my terms, okay? So he says, perhaps the most hotly contested notion this book relies on is racism. So to him, in its most basic form, racism is an ideology, which he defines as a widely held set of associated beliefs and implicit judgments that misrepresent significant social realities and that function through this distortion to bring about or perpetuate unjust social relations. That's a lot to put in a definition. Shout out to MC Recovery Wellness and Relapse Network. Shout out to this brother here, man, or sister. Shout out to them. Shout out. Okay? So this is what an ideology is. I'm going to repeat this because different people have different definitions of ideology as well, but this is his definition. A widely held set of associated beliefs and implicit judgments that misrepresent significant social realities and that function through this distortion to bring about or perpetuate unjust social relations. These beliefs and judgments form a kind of system of thought, which influences how adherents understand their social life and identities. So you get the picture. So your beliefs and judgments, right, develop a system of thought which influences how you understand the world and yourself and what goes on in the social world, okay? Ideologies purport to be forms of knowledge, factual and normative. They describe how things are to people, I guess, right? They purport, right, to be ways of describing facts and, developing a way of how you ought to act in the world. And so are amenable to critique. They don't just contain false beliefs. More often, they also obscure relevant information. They organize facts in a misleading way or rest on fallacious reasoning. So they don't just have false beliefs, but they often hide information that's pertinent, or they organize real facts in ways that are misleading, or they're just outright fallacious, okay? They rest on fallacious reasoning in and of itself. Because of such epistemic flaws, ideologies constitute a distorted or biased outlook that conceals social injustices, even from those who accept these belief systems, thus inhibiting social reform. Now, this is important here to me, okay? So he goes on to say, many in the grip of an ideology accept it while being ignorant of or self-deceived, right? Self-deceived about the real motives for why they hold it. Many people who are in the grip, who have, or observe, an ideology, are ignorant or self-deceived about the real motives for why they actually hold it. They would like to believe that they accept the belief system solely because of the considerations in favor of its truth. But as a matter of fact, they accept it primarily because of the influence of non-cognitive motives. That's unreflective motives. Okay? Not rational, exploration. It's gut feeling, perhaps, maybe. Okay? For instance, a desire for social status or material advantages. You want to be part of the in crowd, or you want money. Okay? That operate without their conscious awareness. So in other words, ideologies, if you're in the grip of one, can be a matter of unconscious motivations, okay? And this explains why various ideologies have had such longevity and popularity despite their epistemic flaws. They satisfy needs or promote interest apart from our interest in forming true beliefs. It also helps us understand why ideological beliefs are often so difficult to shake in the face of counter-evidence and rational refutation. So, basically he's saying, look, some people who are in the grips of an ideology is based on, unconscious, non-reflective thought or motives, and they're hard to shake, okay? And it's even when you have evidence, people are like, well, I don't care what the evidence is. Like, you're not going to move me to the contrary. And it's partially because, this ideology might influence, their desire for something that is a social good, but is predicated upon something that is insidious, okay? In addition to racist ideologies, there are ideologies that center on religious ideas, nationalist ideas, moral concepts. Shout out to Kanye West and the Black Hebrews to Negroes. Nationalist ideas, moral concepts, and ideas about sex and gender. And these often work together to legitimate unjust forms of hierarchy, exclusion, inequality, coercion, and violence. What is distinctive about racist ideologies is that they invoke or presuppose the problematic idea of race, a concept that attaches social meaning to visible, inherited physical characteristics, continental origins, and biological ancestry. Okay? So an ideology's content can shift over time in response to changes in the social political context. So, for example, explicit beliefs about the inherent biological inferiority of non-white racial groups were more widespread in the past during the eras of chattel slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and modern colonial subjugation. But social movements for justice and emancipation relentlessly attacked these ideas and the regimes they supported. And this is important, this is why I have it highlighted. Today, beliefs and implicit judgments about the cultural backwardness or behavioral pathology of non-white racial groups are more common, but play essentially the same social function as biological racism. I think that this is his bomb moment. So you don't hear outright criticism of black people based upon biological racism. You don't hear those kind of claims anymore. You don't hear biological arguments about the inferiority of black folks anymore. You just don't hear those. But what you do hear are arguments about the cultural backwardness or the behavioral pathology of non-white racial groups. So these beliefs and assumptions are called upon to explain why disadvantaged groups persist in a low position within their societies. They are enlisted in defenses against charges that equal opportunity does not yet exist. They are invoked when people reject out of hand policies that would correct past injustices or reduce racial inequality. Now, what's interesting about this to me is, just think about it. So today, what we don't have are like direct racist claims predicated upon, well, you got dark skin, so you're inferior, or you have a wide or a broad nose and flat lips, so you're inferior. But now what you have is that you have a backwards culture, okay? You exhibit behavioral pathology, right? And this explains why you're in the position that you're in if you're a ghetto denizen, right? You're there because you got the wrong values, okay? Now, I can understand white people making these kind of claims. I can. But it's very difficult for me to understand how black people can be making these kind of claims. But it's routine. I swear to God, it's routine. It's one thing to say, okay, well, there's some pathology there, but what led to the pathology? What kind of institutions create this kind of pathology? What can we do to remedy the institution such that we can get rid of the pathology? I mean, even though he would say that that's kind of like the medical model, it's not really not like it because it's a matter of justice. Like, do we have the right kind of institutions in place that would mitigate the circumstances which create the kind of pathology that you see? Anyway, he goes on to say ideologies are those commonly held beliefs and implicit judgments that legitimate stratified social orders. So in other words, ideologies give rise to justifications for the unjustified, which is illegitimate stratified social orders. They legitimate illegitimacy in relation to stratification, social stratification, okay? So elites do sometimes espouse what we might call ideological doctrines. That is, developed theories. Most people, however, do not have sophisticated views about the relevant phenomena, yet will have absorbed through various media, schools, public rituals, or other revered institutions many of the core assumptions propagated by elites. Let me make sure I'm still on deck. Yeah, I'm still on deck. So, let me just keep pushing. He says, indeed, the locus of ideology is common sense. Common sense. The locus of ideology, the center of ideology is common sense. That reservoir of background assumptions that agents draw on spontaneously as they navigate the complexities of social life and the demands of human existence. These assumptions are often held without full conscious awareness, creating various forms of cognitive and affective unconscious bias. For this reason, people can actually be surprised to learn that they harbor racial prejudices or implicitly accept degrading racial stereotypes. Now, this is the thing that gets me, man. Like, I'm just going to keep it a buck, man. Like, I thought about this. Could there be a group of people out here, white people, man, who have unconscious bias? I think so. I think that's very possible. But I also think that it's like a lot of just intentional racial bias, man, going on out here. Like, I think that these people know full fucking well, like, you know, what they're on. Like, I don't think that most of them are like as aloof as, you know, a lot of black scholars claim that they are. I believe they know full damn well what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing. That's just my opinion, man. That's my opinion, man. Anyway, treating racial ideology as the paradigmatic form of racism does not preclude regarding things other than beliefs as racist. It simply means understanding these other forms or expressions of racism in terms of ideology's main characteristics or effects. In particular, racial ideology, like all ideologies, not only shapes thought, but influences conduct and structures feeling and volition. So, like, racial ideology shapes not only thought, but also conduct and structures feeling and volition, okay? So, for instance, someone who explicitly subscribes to a racist belief system is obviously a racist. But so is someone who is disposed to act on racist assumptions, even when the person does not fully know that such assumptions shape his or her conduct and attitudes. A racist action is one undertaken because of the agent's racist attitudes or an action the agent rationalizes in terms of racist beliefs. So in other words, you could be a racist and not know it. I think that's what he's saying. I think that's where he's going with this. Like, you can be racist without, you know, so-called having intentionally negative attitudes towards people who are racially, you know, constructed in this culture, okay? And this is where we get to the end of this. Like, you know, this is going to conclude. It's four or five more pages, but he's talking about institutional racism at this point. All right. So the concept institutional racism was introduced into anti-racist theory and practice because of the need to explain how ideological racism can operate in institutional contexts where the relevant agents do not consciously hold or openly express racist attitudes. So he says institutional racism can be extrinsic or intrinsic. So then he goes on to talk about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic racism. On the extrinsic conception, an institution's policies are regarded as racist, not by virtue of the policymaker's racist beliefs, but solely in virtue of the policy's effects. Okay? So it's not about beliefs, it's about the effects of the institution's policies. Okay? Extrinsic institutional racism occurs when an institution employs a policy that is race neutral in its content and public rationale, but nevertheless has a significant or disproportionate negative impact on an unfairly disadvantaged racial group. Those who make and apply the policies need not intend this result and may not themselves be racist. What is nonetheless wrong with the institution's practices is that they perpetuate the negative effects of ongoing or past racist actions and thereby encourage racist attitudes and stereotypes. The underlying idea is that some groups in society are already disadvantaged by racism, and an institution that is not intrinsically racist may nevertheless play a role in keeping these groups in their disadvantaged condition, thus leading some to conclude that they occupied this low station because of the disadvantaged group's culpable failings or inherent inferiority. Because the institution in question may not be responsible for the group's prior disadvantages, the racism with which it is implicated may be extrinsic to the institution itself. Nonetheless, considerations of corrective justice justify seeking to reverse or mitigate these negative institutional effects by requiring particular institutions, such as schools, corporations, or courts, to implement remedial policies or to opt for policies that have a less adverse effect on disadvantaged racial groups. Then he starts to use examples. Take, for instance, the practice of racial profiling in policing. Okay? Take, for instance, the practice of racial profiling in policing. Suppose, he says, there is a significant correlation between racial group membership and the commission of certain crimes. Relying on race crime statistics, the police could perhaps reduce crime if they were to stop, search, or investigate members of racial groups differentially. Say, scrutinizing blacks more carefully than whites when trying to curb the illegal drug trade or prevent robberies in urban contexts. Further, suppose that this policy was not instituted for racist reasons, that in practice it is not distorted by officers' prejudice or bias, and that the criminal justice system is not responsible for the prior disadvantages the targeted group faces. Nevertheless, the practice of racial profiling would naturally cause great distress within the targeted group. The special scrutiny would stigmatize the group, leading others to view members in the group with suspicion or fear, and it might even brand the group as a bunch of criminals, thus reinforcing offensive stereotypes and perpetuating racist ideology. If the group is already disadvantaged because of ongoing or past racist practices, racial profiling, whatever its motivation, would likely make their situation worse. So they would be justified in demanding that crime control strategies be chosen that do not have these adverse effects, or, if no alternative policy would reduce crime to tolerable levels, that group members be compensated for the extra burdens policy imposes. Okay, that's a lot. Okay. So then he goes on to say, now that's extrinsic racism. It might not even be intentional. It might not be purposeful. It might just be that it has an adverse impact on a disadvantaged group, a racial group, okay? However, assessments of intrinsic institutional racism focus on the constitutive or constitutive features of institutions rather than merely their external effects. Okay? We can define an institution as a formal system of roles and rules that enable and regulate sustained cooperative action for some specified purpose. Within such a system, there are explicit criteria for assigning persons to specific roles, and each role requires its occupant to follow certain rules to remain in good standing. Institutions are not abstract entities, but social practices. They are embodied by personnel who make, alter, and administer policy. So that's important to understand, okay? Given this conception of an institution, we can think of racism as attaching to at least three features of institutions. Okay, and I'm highlighting them here. The goals of an institution might be racist. For example, to exterminate, subordinate, exploit, exclude, or otherwise harm the members of a racial group, where such actions are justified or rationalized in terms of racial ideology. Now, no, come on, man. The Klan is intrinsically racist. This is like an intrinsically racist institution. Everybody knows that. The Klan is, okay? Such goals may be the purposes for which the institution was designed or the aims of its current officials. These goals need not have been made explicit or public, but can be covert. Like there might even be institutions that are in existence that you don't even know about that are working to subordinate, exterminate, exclude, or exploit. Okay? Predicated upon the grounds of race. Okay? Some of them, the goals don't have to be explicit, but they can be covert. The rules and role criteria may be, or appear to be, race neutral in content, but may nonetheless be designed to achieve or sustain the subjugation of some racial group. The institution, even when ineffective in achieving its goals, can nonetheless be criticized for its aims. Thus, whether an institution embodies intrinsic institutional racism is not merely a matter of its actual effects. I mean, and there's going to be debate about whether or not an institution is intrinsically or extrinsically racist. Like some, for example, say that Planned Parenthood is intrinsically racist because it was created by Margaret Sanger, who basically wanted to usher population control for blacks by means of abortion. Some might say that it's extrinsically racist because it has a disparate impact on the black population such that more deaths occur to our population. I think 67 of kids born in some geographical locations, 67% of potential black born children are aborted. But hey, okay, so he's just going over what institutional racism is, and he's already outlined what extrinsic institutional racism is. Now he's talking about intrinsic, okay? Intrinsic institutional racism can also be a matter of the content of the rules and role criteria of an institution, where these rules and criteria contain racial bias or are racially discriminatory. And he says, I return below to the question of what constitutes wrongful discrimination. those who administer the rules and criteria need not be racist themselves for the institution to operate according to racist principles. And administrators need not perceive the racial bias inherent in the rules they comply with. In other words, if the content of the rules of an institution are intrinsically racist, the people who are actually representatives or officers of the institution can be engaged in racist activity and not even be aware of it, including black people. I see what T is saying, but even black people can be participants or officers in institutions that are intrinsically racist and not be racist themselves in the way that, you would normally think that somebody is ideologically a racist. It's worth thinking about. Okay? Finally, intrinsic institutional racism can be implicated in the application of procedures. So what he's trying to do is cover all the bases. Let's talk about all the ways in which an institution can be racist, extrinsically and intrinsically. So finally, he says, intrinsic institutional racism can be implicated in the application of procedures. The goals of the institution may actually be legitimate. The content of the rules and role criteria, when viewed in the abstract, may be race neutral and unbiased. Nevertheless, if administrators fail to impartially and consistently apply the institution's rules and criteria due to personal prejudice, conscious or unconscious, the institution may be criticized as intrinsically racist. Whatever the substantive content of institutional procedures, justice demands even-handedness in their application. Institutional racism in application occurs when this distorting effect of prejudice is pervasive, thus leading to the systemic or systematic violation of the formal requirements of justice. This is why people can come out and say, and he's right about this, this is where systemic racism comes into play. But the point is that I kind of lost my train of thought. I don't want to misspeak. Put it this way. This is why people said that the FHA loan policy in America and the GI Bill were intrinsically racist. Because what it did was, nobody thinks that FHA loans in and of themselves are racist. But it's the way that they were applied. The way that the loan policy was applied in and of itself was intrinsically racist. That was the problem. So this does lead, as BGS is saying, it leads to systemic racism. And yeah, I agree with T on the last comment, though. I do agree with that. And I think that the author would agree with that as well. Okay? Anyway, he goes on to say, of course, an institution can have all three of these features simultaneously, as exemplified by the institutions that constituted Jim Crow. Again, however, the point of the concept of institutional racism is to take account of the fact that unjust racial hierarchy and equality can be systematically reproduced in the absence of explicit racist rules or overt racial animus. And this is the important part to take away from that, right? Unjust racial hierarchy and inequality can be systematically reproduced in the absence of racist rules or overt racial animus. This is why black people are constantly, having problems with white people. Because white people want to make racist nothing but ideology. They want to make it nothing but cognitive bias, and intentional cognitive bias at that. That's what they want to reduce it to. But people who study racial theory, they want to look at more than just people's attitudes and their ideology. They want to look at institutions and institutional practices. Okay? That's what black people continuously want to look up. Okay? So anyway, he goes on to say it's useful to think of the controversial disparate impact standard in U.S. federal law in terms of institutional racism. At least since Griggs versus Duke Power Company, 1971, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 64 has been interpreted such that an individual or group has legal standing to sue an employer who relies on policies that, while perhaps not designed to discriminate, in fact, have a disproportionately adverse effect on disadvantaged racial minorities. This charge of unjust treatment can be rebutted. And see, so this is the thing though, okay? So this is crazy to me. So there is such a thing as disparate impact. And, one could argue that, you could argue that a policy or practice, institutional practice is racist, predicated upon the whole notion of disparate impact. However, an employer or an institution can rebut the claim of disparate impact by basically showing or demonstrating, right, that the policies actually serve a legitimate business purpose, and that the plaintiff, the person who's making the claim of disparate impact, cannot show that an alternative set of policies would adequately serve that business purpose with less disparate impact on the relevant racial group, right? So the disparate impact standard could then serve two distinct purposes: to constitute strong, if not conclusive, evidence of intentional, though covert racial discrimination, or to protect unjustly disadvantaged racial minorities from further marginalization by removing unnecessary barriers to equal opportunity. In the former case, the concern is with intrinsic institutional racism, and the disparate impact standard is employed to discover whether a policy that is race neutral in content has actually been enacted to achieve a racist aim or is applied in a racially biased fashion. Such standards of proof are necessary in a social context where discrimination is generally concealed and rationalized. But in the latter case, the concern is with extrinsic institutional racism, and discriminatory intent is neither implied nor presumed. The focus is rather on the consequences for the unjustly disadvantaged. Now, this, I'm gonna leave my comments for later. I'll talk about these things, at some other time, okay? But I just want to get through this because I got groceries coming and I want to make sure I get through all, at least up to this point right here. I want to at least get to this point right here. I got like maybe 2 pages left, okay? So, moreover, the legitimate business purpose condition could have 2 distinct roles corresponding to the 2 objectives of the disparate impact standard. In one case, we demand that employers specify a legitimate purpose to allay our suspicion that the policy has been enacted on illegitimate grounds, that is, because of ideological racism. In the other case, we seek to protect the unjustly disadvantaged from policies that adversely affect them, allowing such policies only when a legitimate interest promoted by the policy. This is the shit that fucks me up about this, man. Only when a legitimate interest promoted by the policy outweighs our interest in removing obstacles to equal opportunity. Okay? The principal institutions of a modern society are regulated by law, are causally linked, and interact in complex ways. Consequently, the negative effects of institutional racism can result from the combined force of 2 or more institutions. This is important. I thought it was important. I didn't highlight it. For instance, the life prospects of a black individual will depend on the treatment she receives from schools and employers. If, because of institutional racism in schools, she receives an education that is inferior to that of her peers, she will be disadvantaged in the competition for jobs, even if she faces no employment discrimination. Institutional racism in either domain will, in turn, have effects on her ability to accumulate wealth, and so the consequences are far-reaching. But her disadvantage could be a consequence of institutional racism in education and employment, where this compound effect is neither coordinated nor sought by the relevant officials or policymakers. To highlight the significance of this combined effect of institutional racism, some refer to it as structural racism. The terminology is useful and fits the focus of the basic structure of society. Yet, the phenomenon at issue, which could also be called inter-institutional racism, should be distinguished from another that sometimes goes by the same name. And this is a lot to unpack, man. So you got to go back and unpack it yourself. I mean, maybe if there's a certain section you want me to unpack more, we can spend more time on it. I don't know how useful the disparate impact conversation was to bring in right here, but I do understand its relevance because he wants to talk about structural racism, okay? And he also wants to point out that racism inside of an institution might not be intentional or might not be carried out by officials in institutions who are harboring racist ideologies. It could just be that the institutions are creating these unjust disadvantages for certain subjects or certain citizens, okay? So I think that's why he introduced this set of paragraphs, okay? Anyway, the myriad injustices that Black Americans suffered in the past are among the sources of Blacks' disadvantages in the present. I think that that's also true. But a lot of people like to push back the previous injustices of Black people into the ancient past. Like 60 years ago is not the ancient past. 200 years ago is not the ancient past. 400 years ago is not the ancient past. Now, 2,000 years ago is the ancient past. That's the ancient past, okay? 2,500 years ago is the ancient past. 60 years ago is not ancient history. I'm sorry, it's just not. Anyway, many racially marked contemporary social inequalities, for example, in wealth and educational achievement are due in part to the history of racial injustice in the United States, because these disadvantages have been caused by racist practices. Some refer to them as structural racism. Here the term refers to an explanatory thesis than to a normative concept. Those who rely on it want to emphasize that contemporary racial inequality has been engendered by past racist practices. But there is an implicit moral concern, namely that justice requires these handicaps to be remedied. The Great Society programs and affirmative action in hiring and education were, arguably, attempts to rectify the legacy of racism. However, many Blacks remain deeply disadvantaged, which suggests that these remedial attempts were inadequate. And this is the shit that gets me right here, and I emphasize it on purpose, okay? Some would insist that the existing disadvantages Blacks face, including ghetto poverty, are not due to racism, whether ideological, institutional, or structural. They believe that enough has been done to make amends for the wrongs done to Black people, and that what racial prejudice remains is not so pervasive or powerful that it diminishes Blacks' life chances or attenuates Blacks' rights. Existing Black disadvantages, they would argue, are now due to Blacks' bad life choices and self-defeating attitudes. And this This is where a lot of black folks are. It ain't just white people, man. This is black people are here. Black people are right here, right now. Even a lot of men in the black manosphere are right here. Even niggas that went to prison in the manosphere push this shit. Like, I'm like, dude, you nigga, you went to jail. You went, not jail, nigga, you went to prison. niggas who went to prison and got tattoos on their faces and shit. It fucks me up, man. Look, I get it. I understand that, you know, we got to do better. But come on, man. Anyway, he says, if this point of view is mistaken and widespread, as I think it is, then it represents an ideology that must be strongly resisted, for it contributes to sustaining unjust social arrangements by concealing the fact that these arrangements are unjust. And if this is the ideology, he says, and if this ideology is propagated or embraced in bad faith, say, because of veiled racial hostility, a desire to hold on to unjust privileges, or indifference toward black suffering, then its adherents are blameworthy for their reactionary stance. A disposition that some have termed laissez-faire racism, hands-off racism. But, the only thing I hate to hear is black people say the same shit. This right here. So I do think that this is, as with Shelby Steele, not Shelby Steele, but with Tommy Shelby, with him, I concur with this. I think that this is an ideology. If I were to use Marxian terms in order to explain it, I would call it alienation, self-alienation, or false consciousness is how I would refer to it. When you basically take on the same attitude as your oppressor. Anyway, thus, when structural racism is used as a normative concept, one that implies strong disapproval, the moral basis of the charge can take either of three forms. One, might be objecting that the principles of rectification have not been fully satisfied. That is, amends for past racial injustices have not been adequately made, or that harms done have not been properly remedied. So that's one. Or one might be objecting to the effects of a new post-racial ideology that represents the existing racial inequality as if it were merely a consequence of disadvantaged racial groups' conduct and attitudes rather than the legacy of past racism. Or, finally, one might be alleging that racial ideology explains why effective remedial measures for past racial injustices are not instituted. So when I use the expression structural racism, I mean it in this value-laden way and will specify the normative basis of the charge. So he's like, okay, it's different ways. You can define structural racism normatively or descriptively. So he already told you, he's just laying out terms here, okay? And I'm laying out the terms so that when I read further chapters, and the chapters, bruh, they get into all the conversations being had in the black manosphere for goddamn certain. I guarantee it. Everything from Pookie to Quenisha and Shaquina and all them, to single motherhood, and absent fatherhood, violence, sexual assault, DV, the whole nine, all that shit is talked about. Straight up. But he's defining terms before he even begins to have a conversation about all of these issues. Okay? So I just wanted to, you know, that's as far as I'm going to go tonight in terms of me reading this. Any questions? Any questions? Any comments? Because if you ain't got no questions or comments, I'm about to sign off and get ready to do this. I might come in and just read Unjust Discrimination tomorrow. And that's going to be maybe 10 pages, I think. I'm just looking at it now to go to see how many pages it is, really. No, I can't. I'll probably just read that section. It's like maybe 10 pages. And then there's another section called Poverty, Class, and Equal Opportunity. And it goes to page 49. I'm pretty sure all of this goes to page 49. I'm not going to read more than 10 to 15 pages at a time. I'm not reading 20 to 30 pages. Y'all, first of all, you're not going to pay attention if I do that. So, what's up, my man? What's up, Marcus? What's cracking? What it do? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you loud as a motherfucker, though, boy.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. I just want to make sure because my headphones, man.
But I had technical difficulties earlier.
Oh, hold on,
bro. So all I'm doing is, what I'm doing is I'm reading a text. Again, the name of the text is called Dark Ghettos, Injustice, Dissent, and Reform. Okay? And I'm reading it because I think that, this text is, it's a new school rendition of what was done with, the work of Kenneth Clark and his Dark Ghettos to begin with. And a lot of what Kenneth Clark discussed and what he talked about is also brought up in this book. Okay? And just to let you know, there's been some controversy surrounding this dude, man, and his, delineation of his way of thinking about what's going on in the ghetto, especially as it pertains to reproduction and family construction.
All right, I'm good. I had the video playing in the cut. What's going on, man? My bad.
Nothing to it, bro. Nothing to it, man. I'm just.
I was here listening, man, and I brought my other camera back to the West Coast, so just messing around, and you said, "Hey, if you got something to say, jump in here." But yeah, I've been in the cut, just listening to you, man.
And I know this is not titillating, but I can tell you it can. Nah. Okay, it can get titillating. I'm gonna tell you why. Tommy Shelby lighter. Okay, so look, dude. Okay, so this cat. This dude, Tommy Shelby, was at a conference, right? He was invited to a conference, right? A feminist conference to have a discussion and shit. And let me show you this, man. He might not want me to show this because he might think it's behind him. And it is behind him. And I'm no shade to him. I think that what he had to endure was it was ridiculous. Okay? Can you see this, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so basically, Tommy Shelby from Harvard suggests that moral duties apply to the oppressed too. And the Society for Analytic Feminism apologizes for its remarks, moving to front from earlier today, several updates, corrections. So anyway, so this is a blog called the Leiter Reports. People who are in philosophy know what the fuck Leiter Reports is. Okay, it's like what's a popular blog? Like, I mean, it's like a Reddit, thread, but it's like one that everybody tunes into, like with their hands rubbing together, like, let's see what the bullshit that's going on in philosophy is, right? So anyway, this is what the person Leiter has to say. He says, the comical sanctimony of certain segments of the philosophy profession is a regular topic of conversation and head shaking among adults. But the insulting treatment of philosopher Tommy Shelby after his keynote at the meeting of the Society for Analytic Feminism sets a new low. Justin Weinberg, who always has his finger on the racing pulse of the hypersensitive, offers this account. At the SAF, the Society for Analytic Feminism, some members of the audience found the keynote talk by Tommy Shelby, drawn from his forthcoming book, Dark Ghettos, highly objectionable. My understanding, he's qualifying the statements, which may not be entirely accurate, is that the controversy concerned some remarks in the talk about procreative ethics. How? As he puts it in an earlier article, basic duties are not suspended or void because one is oppressed, and whether what he said was disrespectful to poor black women. Some attendees apparently thought that an apology was in order, perhaps from the organizers. And, update, 2 days after the conference ended, its organizers sent an email to the participants apologizing. This is fucking some Kanye drink champ shit. To a professional philosopher who's making comments at a conference, okay? But anyway, go ahead. So
no, I was going to ask.
Go
ahead. Finish it first, and I want to ask a question for clarity, but finish reading it first.
So basically, look. So there was a black woman who was there. Comment below from a poor black woman who was there. So this is created, like his book has created controversy because basically what Tommy Shelby is going to say is this: if you live in the ghetto and you know what kind of institutions exist there, and you understand the life chances of a kid that's born there, you probably want to restrict your procreation until you have evolved to a situation where your procreation is not going to hamstring the child. Okay. You get what I'm saying? Stop fucking in ghetto poverty and reproducing to the point where you got kids growing up that don't have a fucking chance to live out a life plan. There's going to be one where they have a shot of being successful.
We made this argument to Amiri, but go ahead, continue. I remember. Yeah, go ahead. Continue. Now, I
mean, there were people. Several women were offended who were there because he made these arguments. He's like, look, maybe perhaps procreation in this kind of situation is not optimal.
Right.
Perhaps, I mean, for him to even suggest it, though, was considered to be oppressive and, like, insulting and,
Okay.
Which, and I get what T is saying here. He's like, well, there's never been a condition in which black people have, not lived in ghetto conditions or whatever. But, I mean, bro, like, I get it. But at the same time, bro, like, we got to find a way to do better in the way that we procreate as well, and the form and the family structures that we develop. Like, right now, you got women who are basically like, I don't want a man, I just want a baby.
Right.
And I want a baby only because I want to feel valuable as a woman. I need a companion. It's like wanting a dog. Like, if you want a fucking dog, go get a dog. A child is not a pet.
Right.
A child is not, an animal that you use in order to, fulfill some sort of loneliness needs. That's not the reason you have children.
This is why I'm, and a lot of people gonna get mad at what I'm gonna say. this abortion argument that's made by a lot of guys in this space, right? Where they talk about, oh, you're killing all these babies, and the highest abortion stats or whatever in the country. I was on with Dr. Thunder yesterday, and he played a video where a woman said, abortion shouldn't be banned, it should be unnecessary. And I agree with him. Okay. The thing is, if you're gonna complain about you can't complain about all these things at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? Where on one end you're complaining about women having these children and in poverty, but then you complaining about the abortions. Like my man said, people gonna keep fucking. It's a natural instinct, and I agree with him. Okay, but fucking is not parenthood, right?
And then also with as many contraceptives and forms of prophylactics and shit
Right.
that are out here right now, like sex doesn't have to be, like something that necessarily leads to procreation. It could just be for pleasure. Like
so then they'll complain about all the side effects of that, right? So every form of birth control, they'll give you a reason not to use it when it's something that they wanted the right to use, right? They wanted the freedom that came with it. Now it's, we don't want to do, like, it's a very convenient thing where they 1 minute, abortion is evil and contraception, all that stuff is bad, until you say, all right, well, let's get rid of it. And then, oh my God, my reproductive rights, right? They abuse this stuff. And that's real. But I am of the belief of what homie is saying here. He's saying, in these messed up circumstances, you might want to reconsider, having kids in these situations. You might want to do what you can, at least to create anything closer to the, it doesn't have to be perfect, but anything closer to a better situation, for having kids. This ain't working. It's not working this way. It just ain't. So while people might say, well, black people won't procreate, that's why a lot of these women are getting abortions anyway, because their natural instinct is to have sex, and when they do get pregnant, they go get the abortion because of the issue. So the abortion is now the birth control, right? So
But here's the issue, right? Like, and I understand. Look, we understand that white supremacy exists, right? We get that. Like, I get it more than anybody else. Like, I'm one of the people in the black manosphere who's definitely attentive to white supremacy. I don't try to make excuses for it. I don't try to make an apology or an appeal to conservative black people and say, well, I'm a cut above. I'm cut from a different cloth than the rest of these pookies and these these Shaniquas and shit. Like, there's some people here who do that. I don't do that. Okay, I'm not one of the guys who does that. Okay, but I also understand that we have to be practical in how we deal with the situation that we're in, and as Tommy Shelby is trying to articulate and argue, and we haven't even gotten to it yet, but morality still obtains, moral duty still obtains for people who are oppressed. Okay? Now, moral duty might require you to fight against or resist against white supremacy. It might require you to adjust your personal habits and your personal practices, predicated upon not just what you desire, but the impact on your progeny. Like if you are in the ghetto, man, you ain't got a job, you don't have any education, and you already got 6 kids, get your fucking tubes tied. Do something. Like, you already have procreated. We understand that black fruit is beautiful. We get it. We understand. I get it. But you got to also understand that if you don't have the capacity to care for that child Or the situation, well, let me use even a different example, okay? Let's say, for example, you're a woman, right? And you're in a relationship with a man and he's a brutal motherfucker, right? You know he beats the shit out of the kids, right? Is it responsible for you to have another kid and to put that kid in the same circumstances?
Can I ask T this? T, do you drive the same speed in the rain that you do in the sun? Do you drive the same speed on a wet road as you do on a dry road? Or do you alter your driving for the road conditions? That's a very simple question. Now, you could be in a hurry or you could not be in a hurry, but it's a very simple question, and that's a yes or no.
And the argument, look, my whole thing is this. We should argue against, like, I don't think that abortion in and of itself is the answer. I don't think that, curtailing black births is the answer to white supremacy. It's not. Okay? I get that. I understand. But the only point I'm trying to make is, here's a guy that's like saying some things about reproduction, and he hasn't been the only person saying this. Like, again, BGS made a reference, and there's another brother, Aaron Smith, who basically talked about like how Francis Cress Welsing thought about this situation. And you can't say that Francis Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller are white supremacists. You definitely can't say that they are. They saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing. He's saying, look, there are many factors other than just being born that contribute towards the productivity and, the robustness of black life. Like blind and purposeless reproduction is one of the problems that we got in the black community.
Right.
It's not. It'd be different if it was Planned Parenthood, right?
Right.
It would be different if it was planned, if it was perceived as non-accidental, if it was established, prognosticated. It was, like it was planned in a meticulous way. But what we're doing out here, we just having serial hookups and fucking and producing kids with no idea about the infrastructure into which those children will be raised and educated. I mean, think about it. Like, this is the truth. These are the facts of black life, man. Whether we want to say that it's just or unjust, at least during segregation, black people had dual institutions to that of white people by necessity. You had black banks, black movie theaters, black bus lines, black cafeterias, black hardware stores, because you had to have dual institutions because white people didn't want you to go in their shit. So you had to have dual institutions, right? Parallel institutions to that of white folks. After the Civil Rights Act, or after the Civil Rights Movement, we went for the integration move. Okay, we went to the integration strategy, lost all of the parallel institutions. So now we just sending kids to be educated by white women. We're throwing our kids into the fucking ocean with sharks. And I understand that you need to keep your population up. We get that, but goddamn, you got to have your population. You got to prepare them to have something that's waiting for them. These sons got to, like, having a baby if you homeless is fucked up, bro.
Yeah, that doesn't save black. Having more children in poverty does not save black people, T. You understand what I'm saying? He says, well, who benefits from less black people? Who benefits from more black kids born in poverty, to be honest, it creates more of a load against the progress you're trying to make. You're putting obstacles in the way of your path to wealth, right? By having more unnecessary children before you get to that point. All right. So it's like, that's why I say, without everybody making the abortion argument, of course, I think abortion should be unnecessary with everything that we have in 2022 to stop pregnancy in the first place. But at the same time, the argument is being made by people who think that more kids born in poverty is the answer to the black culture issue, or the black issue, the black, the wealth gap, or any other issues we have. We have more children. We have more of these, these women with more children. What does that get us? What yardage does that get us? How does that help our issue? Because you're saying, well, who does it benefit? Less of a load, less of an obstacle in your path to wealth benefits.
You're breaking up quite often. I don't know if that's on my part or if it's on your part, but you're kind of breaking up a bit. You bored.
Oh, it might be the connection here, but I don't see, because I'm looking here, I don't see it freezing. I don't know, but no, I was saying, I might have to say a little bit of that over. I'm saying more kids born in poverty does not solve our problem. You have to remove obstacles to your wealth. You got enough of external factors blocking you from getting ahead.
To go. Like we don't need to get stuck on him. Like,
I got you.
But the main issue, and thank you, brother, for is speaking your mind. Because we need to allow people to speak their minds in this space. Even if they don't agree with everything we say, they still should have the right to say what they have to say. Right? And because they're not in dialogue with us in real time, we have an advantage over what they're saying as they write things down. But at the end of the day, my viewpoint on this is, even if he has the gall or the audacity to make value judgments about black people's behavior. And that's what some people don't like. We haven't gotten to that portion of the text yet. Okay? We haven't gotten to that portion of the text, but when we get there, I think it'll be interesting. Okay? Because he has some things to say about people, so-called pookies and so-called, Shaniquas or Glorrillas and shit like that.
Glorrillas.
Yeah. Because, you got to think, man, Glorilla to me today is the current incarnation of the strag. Is she not?
Yeah. I'm mad that a woman is calling herself Glorilla. If it's bad enough we got a stallion. Now we got a Glorilla.
I was just talking to my boy. We're going to have I'm going to bring him back on the show too Saturday. The guy you were kind of arguing with, my boy JC.
I wasn't coming at you, man.
No, it's cool, bro. Bruh.
Okay.
You can come at him. He a man.
No, I don't want to come at him. We in the chat. We good.
He'll be back on Saturday, okay? But my whole point to him, at the time, was, look, dude, why are you championing the whole wage gap, the gender wage gap issue, when in reality you got to look at like all the shit that black people are going through, especially black men. Like, why are you focused or honed in on the gender pay gap? Like, why is that of primary concern to you at all in terms of thinking about justice? And, the only thing I can think is that, white women's value system and norms are the predominant norms and value systems that exist in, today's culture. But how do we turn this shit around? But, I think that, at least the author of this text, Dark Ghettos, is going to say that there's some institutional and structural issues that have to be dealt with. And it is not just a behavioral issue. It is a behavioral issue to some degree, but to a large degree, it's an institutional and a structural issue that, kind of exacerbates what's going on in the ghetto at large. And I think that that's just the correct assessment. Yeah, I mean, you need to focus on behavior. And I think he does focus on behavior. But we have to wait and see what he has to say, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, exactly, T. That's what I told my boy. I was like, look, you concerned about what the average white woman is making to the average man in general, or like, you know, men to women, but look at the wealth gap. The wealth gap is what you need to be worried about, but if you worry about the wealth gap, then you have to worry about black male income, because black men are nowhere near the same level of income as white dudes. That would close the wealth gap right there. But they, you know, women think that they, you know, and also I told my boy, I was like, look, bro, if women are insistent upon, you know, earning their own money and, you know, occupying spaces traditionally held by men, then they're gonna have to take up the burdens traditionally held by men.
Yeah, I told him that also.
You're gonna have to have some motherfucking bitch, you need a male wife, bitch.
Yeah,
And you need to be quiet about it. You don't need to complain about it. You need a male wife then.
He's talking about who runs the labels. I'm sorry, man. Everybody, yo, let me ask real quick question, G. Why do we always blame? Like, we can't blame the labels for culture. He's because he's like, who props up this filthy music? Who runs these labels?
Go ahead and give it to him. My groceries just came. I gotta bring him in the house. Keep talking to him.
So
keep talking to him.
Understand, and I had this conversation with Dr. Thunder yesterday when we was talking about Glorilla and what's the other woman? She just put out a record. Oh, Summer Walker. Okay, let's do me a favor. Let's stop blaming the labels for the content of the music that not only black artists are putting out, but that black culture is demanding, right? They bump it. They bump the music. These people, them little hat people ain't coming to the hood and turning your radio to the station with the ignorant shit on it and turning it up and making you listen to it. They're not doing that. Okay? They can't sell it if you don't buy it. Them people are providing a product that is in demand by the culture. Actually, it is the culture. It is the culture. Okay? So let's stop playing games. Okay? Them people ain't in no executive office writing the lyrics for these female rappers. They're not doing that. They are selling, and much of these artists are already popular by the time they get a deal. And what the label does is they put money behind what they're already selling. Bro, let me tell you something, T. I've been around that music shit the whole 90s. When you're not gonna argue with me. Understand. And I don't care who say what on no interview. Where it's some clandestine room where a bunch of people are sitting in the room and saying, yo, we finna infect the hood with ratchet lyrics. Knock it off, man. Knock it off.
You know, like my view on this is, you know, look, you know, I've written papers on this shit, right? And one of the things that I do know is that initially, like when you think about rap music, and here's a perfect example, right? Hip hop has always been vulgar, okay?
Right.
And if you know anything about hip hop and its inception, especially the MCing part of hip hop, it started off with rapping DJs and shit. You know, like DJ Hollywood or you know, niggas basically doing call and response chants over break beats from DJs at block parties and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And even like, you know, warehouse jams and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes these cats would be talking like DJ Chiba Chiba. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, which is a reference to weed. You know, and a lot of cats early on, even during the MC phase before it became popular in terms of hip hop, they had names like Ski and Blow and shit like that, which is a reference to cocaine.
Right. It was,
you know what I'm saying? So like these guys were talking about what they were doing, and it wasn't always clean.
No,
right? It was some ratchet shit.
It's from the streets. It's streets.
It was some street shit.
It's the streets.
But a perfect example of how like at first the record labels were all about cleaning up the image of hip hop and making it more palatable to, you know, a demographic so that it wasn't explicit. Like one of the records that I remember early on was DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince's "Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble."
Right.
You remember that record?
Yes, sir.
With the "I Dream of Jeannie." So one of the references that Fresh Prince makes in that record is like, it says, "So I punched her in the chin. I said, you better stop bugging." Now this is Fresh Prince back in like, we talking about the mid 80s, damn near, okay? Where he says, "I punched her in the chin." But when the record first came out on a different label, I have the record. I can't remember because I'm not looking at it, but the label was different. When they got signed to Jive, they put the record out again. They remastered it, remixed it. And so he said, so I pushed her away. And you know, that was the lyric then. It was like, you know, so I pushed her. At first he punched her in the chin and said, "You better stop bugging." Then he said, I pushed her away and said, "You better stop bugging." And that's Jive RCA basically cleaning up the record. You know what I'm saying? Making it more palatable. But you don't start to see all this hardcore shit until you start to see Too Short, who also was signed to Jive eventually. You know, he wasn't initially signed to Jive, but I mean, initially he had his own label, but he got signed to Jive. Okay? When you start to hear the Too Shorts, the Ice-T's,
right.
The even in New York, what's the name of that cat? Just Ice,
right?
Tim Dog, and NWA. They changed the hip hop game.
Right.
Them dudes unilaterally, the Ghetto Boys, Too Short, Just Ice, Ice-T. They in the NWA, they changed the rap game. They changed. They made it, but there were always filthy black artists anyway.
Right.
Like I mean, even like so you got Rudy Ray Moore, who was filthy. Red Fox, who was filthy. Ma Mabley, did I say that? So you already had filthy.
And the mainstream didn't want anything to do with them people you named. Dolomite wasn't mainstream. He wasn't mainstream. NWA wasn't mainstream. They was independent at first. The labels didn't want anything to do with that because they was worried about their interests. They was worried about, people who, was backing them money wise and things like that. It's not until these people see how much money. Understand, we've had a culture shift since then that's affected everything, not just music. All right. So the culture shift right now, hip hop is the number one stream music in the world. So this ain't about just black. This is the world. Okay. So understand that there was a time where the labels that you think are navigating this, they didn't want to touch any of this stuff. They were scared of the Ice-T Cop Killer. They were scared of the Luke. They had to put the parental sticker on the music and all of that stuff. Okay. Now you got women making records saying the same stuff that Calvin Butts and C. Dolores Tucker was going at dudes for in the 90s.
and meeting with congressional motherfuckers and
Bob
having
Dole.
chats and shit over coffee and tea, eating like what they call tapas and shit, drinking wine.
Yeah. So let's make this about culture. You know, we talking about the guy sitting in the office again. Anything that's going to get them bad press, backlash, loss in funds, loss in support, politically or otherwise, they not going to touch it. But once the culture changes, okay, then that's different. Let's not forget. Once upon a time, we had a culture of Public Enemy and X-Clan and all of that stuff. And when that stuff was lucrative, they put them records out. That music was lucrative once upon a time. They put that stuff out. Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing comes on. We know the opening music, Fight the Power. He played the whole record in the intro with Rosie Perez dancing. That was the culture then. We're not in that space anymore. So it's not about what the labels, but don't talk to me about what the labels is telling the artist to do. They're telling the artist to do what's selling. The artists that are coming in that they don't want to put out the ratchet gangster stuff, the labels are saying we can't market you because that's not the wave right now because the culture's asking for this. They didn't create that lane. They're only following what the streets made, T. So anyway, yeah, man, you ain't gonna. I've sat in some of those rooms, bro. So you ain't gonna tell me, bro. I've been to Jive. I've been to Jive. I've been to a lot of these different labels. I've been to Violator, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. You're not gonna, please. That stuff was, the culture has changed, bro. So yeah, it's getting filthier and filthier because now the shocking stuff is what sells. The shocking stuff is what sells.
I don't even think it's as filthy as it was, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it's just right now what you're starting to see is women enter into it though, like in larger numbers than you've seen before. Because usually hip hop is a predominantly male enterprise.
Facts.
Right? But now you're starting to see Sweeties, Megan Thee Stallions, the City Girls, Glorillas, and just a whole host of women. Like usually you only had like 5 or 6 women. Now you're starting to see dozens and dozens of women, and they're saying the same shit. The dudes, but look, if you got a guy talking about women and how they fucking these stripper hoes and shit like this, eventually the stripper hoes gonna want to say what they got to say.
I agree with you.
They're gonna eventually the stripper's gonna be like, hold on, you talking about it so much. Now it's time for me to show you what they talking about.
Let me tell you I'm gonna tell you, this is what I said on Facebook. The evolution of the female rapper is this. At one point, the female rapper was rapping like the male rapper, meaning they wanted to be as lyrical, as skilled, as wordplay, inclined as the male rapper. You had your Latifahs and your Lights and your Lauryn Hills and stuff like that. So then the next incarnation of the female rapper is your Little Kim, your Foxy Brown, right? Where they're talking that sex shit, right? But the difference between Kim and these rappers now is Kim was rapping to men about, yo, I'm gonna do this and do this and do this. These women are now rapping to other women about how, just like how the men would rap about women. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, yo, I'm gonna finesse this dude, I'm gonna get his money, just like the dudes were saying, yo, I'm gonna smash and keep it moving, right? So that's the difference. The female rappers audience is now the women when it used to be the men. Foxy Brown and Little Kim used to rap to men. And I agree with you, G. Now what it is there's a lot of guys that because you're not the audience and it's not centered around you, now you have an issue. But I'm gonna say this: a lot of this shit is just whack, right? A lot of this shit is just whack. Now, if it was like Nicki Minaj, when she's rapping to, remember when she first came out, she was rapping to the Barbies and all this stuff, and her audience was women, but her music sounds good. Same thing with Cardi B. Cardi B, who I know since she was a stripper, right? The stuff that they put out on Cardi B sounds good. She's saying some crazy stuff, but it sounds good. The record that I heard from Summer Walker yesterday is trash. Is super trash. A lot of the city girls are. It sounds like nails on a chalkboard, bro.
But however, though, in their defense, and usually I don't come up to drag defense, but I mean, like if we're gonna talk about ghetto culture, let's just say like Glorilla's fucking hero is Chief Keef.
Right.
No disrespect to Chief Keef, man. I mean, you know, the drill music to me is brainless. It's not skillful.
No.
It's not about lyrical capacity and metaphorical and allegorical dexterity and putting words together. It's a bunch of young niggas that ain't got shit to do other than, you know, to hang in there, you know, I guess latchkey environment where nobody parental is involved, you know, and live out there, you know. I mean, you see a whole bunch of young motherfuckers with guns and dope and shit having a party. It's an endless house party, and the whole point is like, where's the mom? Where's the dad? Big mama ain't there. Like these dudes ain't even got big mamas around.
So listen, I wouldn't. If it was good music,
but you gotta think. But all I'm saying is,
go ahead.
If it's a bunch of niggas like that, the inspiration is the young niggas doing this. Like these girls these women's inspiration are the young guys doing this.
Right.
Their inspiration. You hear Glorilla, she says, "I love Sosa." That's a reference to fucking. You know, it's a reference to Chief Keef. Some people's favorite rapper is Gucci Mane. Now, look, I like Gucci Mane for various reasons, okay?
Right.
But I would never say the Gucci Mane is fucking like as good as, for example, Rakim or even...
I knew you was going to say that. I was waiting for it. Go ahead, continue.
I would never compare Gucci Mane to Rakim.
Right.
But they're in a different lane aesthetically. They're just in a totally different lane.
Right. What I need... Go ahead.
But I mean, I think that there's some dope records from Gucci Mane.
He's entertaining.
Every hip-hop record does not have to take you through a fucking intellectual display of dexterity. That's not what music. Until hip hop, that was not what hip hop was about anyway. Until you start to get to Rakims and Kool Moe Dees and shit like that, or Big Daddy Kane's. It was about, you know, like skill and savoir-faire and all that shit, but it wasn't about like I can be so abstract with my metaphor. The culmination of it is in a white boy like Eminem. Look at my metaphor, my wordplay, and my ability to, you know, hit you with more and more metaphors and slick shit.
Yeah, that shit is over.
It's done.
Yeah,
that's over.
Mm-hmm.
You're over. Not gonna. But music was never that to begin with.
Well, hip hop was intended. But I'm gonna say this, right? For anybody that disagrees with what he's saying. Summer Walker, her verse begins with bald head scallywag, ain't got no hair in back. Now, y'all know who that is. That's Project Pat. Now, you pull up the Summer Walker record. That's the beginning. That's the first thing she say in the verse. Bald head scallywag, ain't got no hair in back. So if you got something to say about her, understand that she's referencing Project Pat, right?
Big Pata, you don't know I got the meta.
Right.
It's
so for those of us from the generation that precedes this one who have forgotten the music that we grew up with, let me give you a medley. Slob on my knob like corn on the cob. Check in with me and do your job. Lay on the bed and give me head. Don't have to ask, don't have to beg. Okay? All right? You know? Don't let me go through no NWA shit. We can go deep, deep, deep. Understand. He says when women do it, it's worse. Okay. See that and bow. He just hit it on the head. Understand, if what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What's good for the goose? He said it might be, well, it is hypocritical, but just I don't even have to go through it now, G. He just
it's
put
the
it out.
chicken heads. Hey, the chicken heads have come home to roost. It is
right.
Hey, look, and
right.
You know, look. All I can say is I got my own. I do think hip hop is fucked up to a certain extent. I do think that. I really do feel that it's fucked up. Okay, I do. However, I think the Western culture in general is fucked up. Like cowboy music, like country music is fucked up. They got more references to death in the past 20 years than like any hip hop. If you go do the research on it, you know what I'm saying? Like the movies that we watch have endless acts of violence in them. Like the movies, just like regular movies. How many times do you see people die in movies through like blatant and like visceral forms of violence?
Mm-hmm.
You still see the shit in cartoons. Like kids is watching cartoons, man. It's dumb violent.
To the sweat drip from my balls. All these bitches crawl. All ski motherfucker. All ski goddamn.
Man, Reyes, man, get your man, nigga. You got two old motherfuckers older than Rakim on your goddamn logo, dog.
Old niggas.
You can't come to me with Michael Jackson and Prince and a motherfucking paid in full logo talking about old shit, man. Get your ass on somewhere, dog.
Hey Ray, I'm on this Saturday. If you want to get fried again,
fuck out of here with that old ass logo, man. Talking about we sound like nigga, you got with that logo, nigga, you are
right.
Fuck all that shit, man. And look, I don't give a fuck about lyricists. Personally, you know, like, because I told my boy a long time ago, hip hop has turned from lyrical shit to chanting and more sing-songy rap. Mm-hmm. It's just, it is what it is. It's turned into what reggae music was. It's taking an island kind of turn. You know what I'm saying? So I think the hip hop was inspired by the reggae artists or the Caribbean artists, and so you hear that influence in the music today. It is what it is. Ain't no going back. It ain't gonna be what it was. I mean, you might get a return to it at some point, but hip hop has evolved in a different direction now. It's different. Talk to him. I gotta get something real quick, Marcus. Hold the shit down.
Right. Anything that you don't want to see, stop supporting it. Okay? Whether that goes for you know, this ratchet hip hop music. Understand that the female demographic, if they're buying the music, and remember, they bought the shit that we was doing. You saw the bitches and tricks ain't, you know, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. They bought that, but they really gonna buy this stuff that the girls is putting out. You know what I'm saying? It just understand that the music that's coming out by these women today, as much as I hate to say it, especially in a manosphere space, is kind of a peek and a look into how some of these females felt back in the bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks era. Not all of them women, because some of them still dance to it. They still dance to it. But for some of them, it was like, damn, these niggas is talking crazy about, you know, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Licked on these nuts and sucked the dick. Get the fuck out, and when you're done, this is the shit that we listen to. So don't say that this shit is worse. It just sounded better. My request of any music is make quality music. You could talk the crazy shit you want to talk, but make it quality. I can't listen to these girls, even just for the music, the musicality of it. You're right. This is the musicality of it. I can't get past.
Stop playing. You be in the crib doing the Glorilla dance like F nigga free. You a F in F.
You know what I'm saying? Yo, I can't even get past the musicality of it. Like, you know, what's her name? Nicki Minaj put out a song called "Looking Ass Nigga" that a lot of niggas got up in arms about because she used Malcolm X on the cover, and I can understand that in the promotional shit. He looking through the windows. It says "Looking Ass Nigga." I understand, but the record was dope. It was dope. It was dope, and she was throwing niggas under the bus a little bit in that shit, but the shit was fire. If you make undeniable music, I will fuck with it. But not only is it's like they talking the crazy shit. It's like they getting in the booth and they saying anything, and the shit is trash. It's like it's super trash, right? You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, understand, like, we can go. You know, we ain't got time to do it tonight, but we can go back in the crates and dig up all the crazy shit from our era. There was some crazy shit from our era. If y'all think that this music is bad, we got some crazy shit from our era. Now, some of the stuff we ain't never heard before, because there's things that women are going to say in music that men are not going to say. Like T said, these chicks are rapping about getting abortions, which of course I think is crazy. I think it's, I think it's crazy. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And Reyes talking like he 20. Nigga, you old. Nigga, you got old niggas paid in full shit in your profile picture. You're an old nigga. Anyway, and this nigga, hey, G, this nigga came on my podcast talking about I was born 1960 something. This nigga stupid. This nigga stupid, man. Yeah, right. Put it in your mouth. What's the Bill Monger? He says
bitch,
he's talking about
nasty bitch. Don't come over here talking that shit.
Right.
Nasty bitch. We had look to this girl is a slut. She got crabbies up her butt. She got a smelly little cunt that's loaded with funk and boogers hanging off her butt. She's a slut.
Right.
And hold on. Akinelli used to put it in her mouth. What else? I mean, it's just so many.
It's so many shit. There's so many records from back in our era that we heard growing up, and a lot of the stuff didn't make it to the radio, and a lot of this stuff doesn't make it to the radio. It's just on the internet. We didn't have the internet before. You understand what I'm saying? And you know, Reyes is too slow to understand that we're defending the new shit. We're not putting it down, motherfucker. Like, nigga, you old. Anyway, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
I know the records because I'm a DJ. I make music.
Right.
So the whole point is, like, when I was a youngster, I DJ'd in New Orleans, bruh. Like, I DJ'd in St. Louis, bruh. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I made music with niggas in California, bruh. So the whole point is, I know all of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know all of it. I mean, being like situated in the Midwest and the South, you know. And yes, there is inspiration from the Caribbean, man. When you start hearing guys chant rapping, that's all you got to do is listen to the reggae artists who was sing-songing, and then listen to how rap evolved into that. That's what hip-hop evolved into.
I ain't going to debate that tonight.
All I'm saying is listen to Future and listen to the reggae artists. And see if they don't sound similar. They all using auto-tune.
Okay, but I'm gonna tell you this. As someone who was a child of the 80s growing up, there are way more remakes in reggae of American music than the other way around. Okay. Now,
bro, look, I get you. I understand what your point is.
Okay.
I get your point.
And they say it.
Hey, bro, all I'm trying to tell you is the influence is cross-cultural. You can say 25, 70%, but I can tell you this. I guarantee you this. First of all, the whole block party setup, the scene, is some Caribbean-style shit to begin with, some Jamaican-style shit. where niggas come up with their various sound systems and try to compete with each other with
No.
sound sets and shit like that. Yeah, go look, go do the history on it, bro.
Bro, I did a whole video called Hip Hop Origins to Jada God. And I'm gonna say this, and Marcus said it, Keep It 100 said it. Cool DJ Herc did not create hip hop. Now I'm a New York nigga, and I'm saying that. I'm saying it on a platform, and anybody who wants to challenge me on that statement, I can pull files on this. I did that video, G, before I came to YouTube. I did it on Facebook. I did a shit called Hip Hop Origins, right? So understand that when Kool Herc arrived in New York,
keep talking. I gotta put my groceries in the refrigerator. It just came.
Right.
Motherfuckers
was already spinning records, DJing at parties and shit like that, and rapping, and like that shit existed already. Okay, he said the realness says most reggae records is R&B covers. That's facts. All right, not to say that they didn't make their original shit, but in the 90s, I grew up with Jamaicans. I'm from Flatbush, Brooklyn. Okay, I grew up with Jamaicans, and that's all we used to talk shit about is how they take our shit and remake it. They've been doing that, and I got video of them saying, even Bob Marley and the Red Doo-Wop and all that, bro. From back then, they've been drawing inspiration. Caribbeans have been drawing inspiration from American music since way back before hip hop. Okay, and there's a lot of elements of hip hop from the late 60s. Okay, said the realness says I'm from the Bronx. Okay, yeah, okay, no doubt. But yeah, okay, so anybody that's from New York remembers a time where Caribbeans, and this is something that Mr. Ray S commented on, which is how I know what age group he's in. Like people from Jamaica and stuff like that, they were on the low with their lineage. They didn't put out there that they were from Jamaica or the islands. They used to pretend that they were American. They used to get away from speaking their accents and things like that, and they wanted to blend into the Black American culture. Okay. It wasn't until, and everybody from New York is going to feel me on
Marcus, this. Let me cut in, man. Let me just say this shit. I just
want one more sentence.
Go ahead.
It wasn't until dance hall broke, and dance hall is an offshoot of hip hop. It wasn't until dance hall broke that Jamaicans became proud to be from the island. Period.
Okay, so look, bruh. I ain't here to talk about chickens and eggs and shit. What came first? None of that. Okay.
No,
all I'm saying is, all I'm trying to say is that the music is cross-cultural with black folks. So niggas get influenced from different genres. So now you got niggas in New York getting influenced by Southern niggas, right? Like Designer.
Right.
Like that motherfucker. That all he is a Future to me, like a Future knockoff. I got halls in Atlanta. It's all Atlanta to so now niggas in New York is copying motherfucking the South where you would never have seen that before. Okay, but what I'm saying, even like say for example the Pop Smoke dude. Okay, his whole vibe was some grime UK shit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that you get this back and forth, this ebb and flow, and this, like this cross-cultural influence. And all I'm saying is when hip-hop took the melodic turn, I ain't gonna say it just snatched it solely, you know what I'm saying, from Jamaican artists, but they did have some similar cadence and some similar, enunciation and basically rhythmic influences from that music. You know what I'm saying? And so that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that there's a direct copying, but black people are going to have cross-cultural influences, man. It's going to happen.
You know these are hip hop offshoots in the first place, and that's all I'm saying.
And look, that's cool. I'm here. It's cool, whatever. But I mean, like, come on, bro. Like Negroes, then we gonna have to start saying which was first. This music or that music or that. We already know, like, African American music is a hybrid between fucking Western and African music in general. You know what I'm saying? That's what the fuck our music is. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But
I don't know how much I even agree with that to an extent. To an extent, all I'm gonna say is this: the reason why it's important is the same reason why dudes make ADOS reparations arguments is because this is what it is. What Black Americans, as far as music is concerned, what Black Americans are, we're kind of over other people taking credit for shit we created, and I think that's valid. I think whether you want to talk about rock and roll, you want to talk about jazz, you want to talk about this, that, and the other, it gets to a point where it's not that we hate on anybody else or this and that and the other. It's that we're a very inclusive culture. We're a very inclusive culture, and what happens is people come into the culture, right? And we let them in, and it's cool. You can come in and you can contribute. Herc contributed a lot to Herc was a DJ with the biggest sound system. Okay, he was a DJ with the biggest. You already said it earlier. What Herc brought to the game, he had the biggest speakers, the biggest sound, and he was popular. Of course, you're gonna go to the party that he promoted the hardest. He was the biggest name moving around the Bronx. But what we don't want to confuse is, because he was Jamaican, that means the music he got into once he got here, he brought with him, which is a lie. And we're tired of Black Americans are tired of we let people into the culture and then they start planting flags, and that's the only problem. That's it. But other than that, you're right. Culture influences other culture, but dancehall is an offshoot. A reggaeton is an offshoot of dancehall. I mean, you can hear the beat, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. All of this stuff is derivative of other stuff, but the original is the original. And the people who created their original shit created it, and it's not to shoot nobody else down. It's just, let's get history right. That's it. That's all we ask is we get history right. That's it. That's all we asking. That's it. Oh, he might not. He might have stepped off. You know what I'm saying?
I stepped out, but I mean, I was putting my frozen ass shrimp in the refrigerator to make sure.
You got shrimp. You bougie nigga. You
hey man, I like to make this shit called jambalaya, dog.
Excuse me.
You know what I'm saying?
Excuse
but
me?
like, at the end of you gotta have like andouille, you gotta have shrimp, you gotta have chicken. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have parsley, not parsley, but garlic, bell pepper, onion, celery. You gotta put it, man. Look, hey, I gotta make my shit. I gotta fuck with my good shit. But anyway,
the realness, I stand corrected. He said Bam had the biggest system. I ain't gonna argue because that's not information that I have. But nah, the realness says Bambaataa had the biggest system, but he agreed. People be flying flags. Real shit. Continue. I'm sorry. Just
but man, bruh, all I can say is, man, look, to these new kids, man, that ratchet shit they got, man, is fun as fuck to them. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we had our fun shit, and it is what it is. You can say it was fucked up for us. I'm pretty sure that's what the adults said about our music, man. They was like, this is some... I remember one day, I was about to DJ this party, and one of my classmates, man, his father had a club. And I was setting up my equipment and, making sure all the sound was, where it needed to be in terms of volume and EQ. And I played a record. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a record. It was vulgar. Might have been Scarface. It could have been the Ghetto Boys. It could have been any number of records. It could have been some NWA or anything. It could have been anything. And, what he said to me was, he said, the nostalgia you motherfuckers got is gonna be fucked up. That's what he said. He said that there's gonna be no nostalgia for you guys, man. What is your nostalgia gonna be? Fuck, this bitch ain't shit. Fuck these hoes. Fuck these niggas. I murdered this nigga. Like when we think about the music from our childhood, that's not what we thought about. Those aren't our memories. That's not in our cultural memory like it is for you. You know, so it is what it is, man. It's unfortunate. Hey, man, Reyes, man, dude, I'm tired of you trolling, man. I'm gonna time your ass out, man.
The only reason I don't go at him is because we on your show. I had fun with him last night.
I'm tired of this clown out,
Your man, he
dude,
over here calling.
Hey, look, man, look,
Caribbean.
motherfuckers like this is America likes to think it's the best thing on earth, man. Like they created and invented everything. Like ain't shit outside of America worth shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, bro. We get influenced by other people from elsewhere as well.
This is true. We just want claim for what we did create. We don't.
And, I don't like if a motherfucker came to me and said that like jazz, like Negroes invented and created jazz.
What I'm saying is,
so, and they created the blues. It ain't no lack, but
Black
other people
Americans
we created a lot of shit.
Yeah,
okay? but the whole point is, look, at the end of the day, man, these young motherfuckers out here doing what they doing, and your old ass, you can call them ratchet, ignorant, ghetto, whatever you want to call them, they gonna keep doing their thing, man. They gonna keep doing their shit.
Right.
You can't stop them. Now you can
just
change
like you
the
can
culture.
stop us.
You can change the culture,
right?
But you can't make these kids just all of a sudden just pump the brakes for your old ass, and then you call us old. All I'm saying is it's some crazy ass music, but I can make it. I can produce it. You done heard me make Beast This Trap. I like the sound of some of the music.
Some of it, yeah. Some of it.
I mean, some artists are better. Some trap artists are better than others. Like you can't. There's some songs from Migos I like. I don't like the bad and bougie shit, but I do like some of the shit from their first album, Hannah Montana. I love that song. I got Molly, I got White. I've been trapping all damn night. I like that. You understand what I'm saying? I like that. Mm-hmm. I like Lil Baby. You know what I'm saying? I think the dude got skills. Glorilla, I don't know if I like Glorilla. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think she's offbeat. But I think that the song that she came out with resonated with a lot of women because a lot of women could resonate with the whole concept of being fuck nigga free. Because it is some fuck niggas out here. It's like it's some fuck women out here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have to just tell the truth.
Let me point this out. The record that we went over yesterday on Dr. Thunder's channel, shout out to Dr. Thunder, which is the Summer Walker record. She made reference to slipping drugs into niggas' drinks. Now we know
who is this? Who did that?
This is Summer Walker.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, so let's pose. We can say what we said, but let's talk about that aspect. The fact that these female rappers can say things that niggas could not. Because we know what happened when your man Ross said something like that in the record. He lost a bunch of endorsements, right? So let's talk about how these female rappers can say shit that's offensive to another level that dudes could not say without backlash. Okay. Now, Aaron, I think Aaron, you might have been there during that part of the yeah, he said I remember that. So yeah, so there's that part of it where female rappers are allowed to say some egregious shit in their lyrics that men cannot get away with saying. Like I said, was good for the goose, good for the gander. So there's no outrage behind this type of shit. So there's a double standard there. I just wanted to point that out since we're talking about it. Okay. You know, so that's a problem for me. Again, for the most part, I don't have an issue as long as it's good music. And there's a lot of dudes out here that are trash. and they saying stuff that is the male equivalent to what these girls are saying, and I don't fuck with them, right? I don't fuck with those. So you say, Chief Keef is trash, right? Well, he's a male rapper, and we're saying, well, he's not, rock him. And that's another thing. It's funny. Who said it right there in the comments? He said, they're not listening to girls' rap lyrics to hit them with charges, right? They're not doing that. They only doing it to niggas. Niggas, you could come left if you're a female. You know what I'm saying? But Lonzo, you're right, because nobody care how black men feel. But the whole purpose in a lot of what they're saying is to offend, right? As long as they don't offend the wrong person, they go that link, Reyes. Yeah. Oh, it's about to get interesting. Hey, y'all. Let me pause. We already know what this rap shit. We talking about that. If your man Reyes jump in here, this shit about to get real interesting. I want to let y'all know. But like I was saying, it to me, black female empowerment is really about offending niggas on purpose. No matter how it makes them look, no matter what it costs them, that whole thing is about being free, having the freedom to offend men with no repercussions, right? If we say something, then they could pull the little hat argument, this and that and the other, right? So, oh, they hate us. You're misogynist, you're this, you're that. No matter how much merit the argument is, whatever, it becomes about that. So, drug and rob, slip a drink, it's a pill in his drink. He don't even know. They can say all the Bill Cosby shit that we can't say. They can say all the crazy shit that we can't say, and it rocks. And that's when you look at the label like, oh, you let that rock. That's when you look at media in general and you say, oh, y'all let that rock, because we'll mention it in this space and it'll get mentioned on a few other places, but then it's like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody will care. But when Ye says what he says, or Kyrie posts a link to something, then it's they really hang niggas up by their ankles on the tree for shit we do and say, and everybody else can rock.
Bro, let me keep it a buck here, man. These chicks, man, are niggas, man. They are becoming like niggas. The niggas we were are the bitches they are becoming.
Right. Look at the pregnant stomach in the background. You see it?
Man, back in the day, man, only niggas would walk around with Hennessy bottles and shit and Black and Miles.
This is the shit some of y'all niggas want to save.
Fucking with the wrong nigga.
Fuck with the wrong nigga, man. Get your bum.
Oh, let's go, people. Oh shit, right.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
In the building. Here we go. Brownsville, Brooklyn represent. Yeah, let's go.
Are you done? I can't stay for long. I gotta wake up early, man. So that's right, man.
Bang that clock, baby.
Yeah, whatever you said, homie. So GG. Okay, yeah, light your cigar. This is gonna be a long trip, or short, long trip. Look here, Gigi. I respect your knowledge, your education, and everything. Right, I give that to you. But for you people outside of New York who have this affinity for the lies, you gotta let it go. Please, just let it go. It's not a big deal. And the only reason,
what's the lie though? I don't know what you're talking about.
That
you gotta
Hurt created hip hop, Bam created hip hop, and what's the other guy? Flash created hip hop, and they're all Caribbean. It's a lie. And the only reason I know this is because I went to the Bronx as a kid. My father moved there because he wanted to be around his people. And I would just venture out, and then the old niggas would tell me the truth. But a lot of these niggas were like, derelicts to a lot. I'm not trying to disparage them, but yeah, it was like the 90s. So, they're probably in their 30s and 40s, life is hitting them hard. So I didn't take them seriously.
What you mean life is hitting them hard? And
I just said derelict. No, they're derelicts. I said they were derelicts.
Oh, okay.
You get what I'm saying? I want to call them crackheads, you know? So bottom line is, so I listened to them and I already knew a lot of history about hip hop. And the thing about it is, like I said, I'm half whatever. And my whole family, especially my older brother, used to always tell me Herc created hip hop. Like they would just drill it into my head. It was like something they needed to say, like out of the blue for no reason. And then one day, me and my brother just got into it finally. I was maybe like 15 or 16. And I finally just said, nah, that's a lie, yada, yada, yada. And I gave him all of the history. And we haven't been right ever since on that topic. Because he knew like everything I said lined up with the history, and I read. This is not something I'm just pulling out my ass. It comes from field research, reading, and growing up in the culture. Because like I said, I'm younger than you guys, right? Not that much, but I am younger. I'm not trying to act like I'm some 29-year-old. But I was like, I don't know a time before hip hop. I literally don't know a time before hip hop. It is a part of who I am. It's something I can't deny. Whereas for people,
well you know, bro, look, I get it, bro. I'm 51 though. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, so you remember a time before then. I don't. How
old are you, man?
I ain't doing all that. But bottom line is,
he's not gonna tell you his age.
Yeah,
he ain't tell me his age. Me and Ray got around the same age.
Got great pubic hairs, nigga.
Yeah, Ray
got nigga, why you talking about it, nigga Johnson? No, that's some weirdo shit. But bottom line,
saying,
I get, but can I just finish what I'm saying? And
I want to respond to him too. But go ahead. Yeah.
My only reason I even push on this, because like I said, I had it drilled in my head as a child, and I grew up with these people, and I've seen them do, it's like a pattern. You give them an inch and they take a mile. So the next thing you know, they'll say Frederick Douglass is Nigerian. They'll say Booker T. Washington is Ghanaian. I'm serious. This is what they do.
He's not wrong, bro.
They do this shit like a motherfucker. They've done it in New York since I was a child. It's not just my family. I'm just talking about venturing out, going to clubs, hanging out. And every time, especially the Haitians, once they reach their certain numbers, the first thing they'll say is, you should thank us for your freedom. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
He's not wrong.
The only reason, and this is what I used to say to shut them down, and I want everybody to jot it down. The only reason they won that war is because you're on a smaller landmass and you got tired of getting buck broken every fucking day. Okay, you got sick. If they did that shit to us over here repeatedly, we would have fucking rose up too like that and went to whatever voodoo ritual they did with Bookman and all Toussaint and all of them in the forest. So bottom line is, I thank you, Marcus, for verifying my claim, because they've done this in New York for years. I know. I'm giving you the real
shit now.
What's that?
You and Marcus on some bro man shit now?
Chill out, homie. I'm just saying, Marcus is good for right now. I still think he's Caribbean, but he could be an ally. He could be an ally.
Hey, G, these niggas talk about I'm Caribbean, man.
I'm just saying, you could be an ally. I love you.
I know where my family from, bro.
Okay, if you are not, I just know, especially
in my motherfucking grandmother geeky than a motherfucker.
Now you get too defensive. You sounded guilty. Chill out.
No, nigga, you high to your age though. How old are you?
One thing I will say is,
you high to your age.
Black American New Yorkers,
what girls do
for Black American New Yorkers. Even if you're not Caribbean, they've been around these people for so long that they've taken on their sensibilities and shit. So I'm not going to say who you are, what you are. I really don't care, but you understand where I'm coming from. But for you, Gigi, I'm going to close it out right here. You're outside of New York. And for people outside of New York,
he's right, bro.
I've always had this problem with you guys. It's like, I love y'all, but y'all don't want to listen because you've been so inundated, especially from your age group, Gigi, where y'all had the Umoja, Uhuru, all that Pan-African babble shit that I was fucking beat over the head with. Like, I didn't know I had cousins in your age group that knew that Black Pan-African shit until I got older. It's because once they came of age, it's like they went on to do work, school, military and shit, right? But no, they was inundated with that fucking Pan-African babble. So you guys have some type of infinity with the pick, with the fist and shit. You don't want to listen to shit. And thank goodness for people for like Yvette Carnell. One thing I can say about her, she got the point across because she had the right voice and the right gender. You get what I'm saying? Like, she's the Southern auntie to these little fucking millennial motherfuckers in college and school. And
can I add on to this? this is what I want to say. What kind of upsets me whenever this conversation comes up is people will say stuff like, yo, you know, they'll give credit to Bam, or they'll give credit to Flash, or they'll give credit to Herc, right? And when you challenge it, then it becomes this, oh, we don't care, or oh, it ain't important where it's from. When the initial thing that started the conversation was that someone stated that these guys invented. So if you say, well, these guys invented this, and then we prove that they didn't, then you don't get to say after that, well, it's not important who invented it. When you tried to say initially, the whole point in the discussion being had was trying to give these guys credit. If we discredit them and we do it with proof and evidence, and I got receipts for this conversation because we did the history on it, then you can't then say that we're offending or we're being divisive and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, we just want credit. It's like the white boys who stole rock and roll. Same shit. It's like, yo, when he's talking about the New York atmosphere, because we in New York, like somebody said in the chat, it's a melting pot. All it takes is one person to say it, and then it becomes the truth. The lie becomes the truth, and then we gotta defend it. And then it becomes this thing where niggas ain't invent shit, niggas ain't create shit, niggas, like Busta Rhymes said, niggas ain't got no culture and all this stupid shit. And that shit is more offensive than the shit that people are thinking is offensive by us saying, no, we need our credit for the shit that we created. This shit was here already. This shit was here already. And our music is the music that went to the islands. That in the 70s, Black Americans did not fuck with anything Caribbean. Let's get that out for J God and everybody that's in the chat. Y'all niggas is probably older than me. Y'all know I had Jamaican friends in the late 80s, early 90s who didn't want nobody to know they was from the islands. So understand, niggas didn't bump reggae music like that in the late 70s. They just didn't. They wasn't fucking with Bob Marley. That's facts.
Yeah.
That's facts.
Hey, check this out, man. I'm going to show you some shit, man.
It's real.
Let me see if I can share this shit. I don't know if I can share it or not. Let me see. Present, share screen, Chrome tab, share audio. You might not be able to hear the audio. I don't know, man. But we'll see, okay? You see that shit right there?
Yeah.
I already know. I already know.
Yeah. That's rap music. That is essentially rap music.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, it's Pygmy.
Can you hear
What
it?
year? Tell them the year. 1968.
Hey,
Can you hear it though? Can you hear it?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear it. I can hear it.
Out. Get it, boy. Yeah, he's a total swing. Just about ready to do that thing. I don't want no tears, I don't want no lies. Above all, I don't want no alibis. This judge is hip, and that ain't all. He'll give you time if you're big or small. Fall in line, or this coat is neat. Peace, brother. Pick up the gun, pick up the gun. Everyone throw and pick the gun. Everybody, pardon this. I'm going to Paris to stop this war. All those cats.
And you know, I just played it to show because I know a little something about it.
Yeah,
But
okay.
also,
Can hold on.
I'll let Ray speak.
Let me piggyback that. I collect vinyl, right? I have a huge collection. And I have a record where I can't find a date on this damn record. But I know it's Nipsey Russell because of the label on the record. Nipsey Russell is rapping on this record. This record is thick as fuck. It's not like your vinyl is thin and flabby, flimsy. Yeah, it's album. It's like some thick ass shit. This shit is old as hell. I bet it's from 1950 something.
Eva, you about to play something else that we did. You got to see this I got to post my hip hop origin video on YouTube. Here it comes, y'all.
Beyond for our members.
Yeah.
Navy Federal Credit.
Our
Our members are the mission.
Yeah, let's pull out them receipts.
Oh yeah. That's real. That's real.
Right. And this shit wasn't influenced by the islands.
No, not at all. See, that sing-soggy rap. That didn't come from Caribbean. But he's kicking verses now.
Down to the brandy sea, he declared that he was a sinful man, and then he decided to destroy the land. He spoke to Noah. Noah stopped. He said, Noah, I want you to build me an ark. I want you to build it 3 cubits long. I want you to build it big and strong. I want it 50 high and 50 wide, so it will stand the wind and tide. It's oh Noah, oh Noah. I got to go to ride on the
I mean, you get the picture, man. I'm not gonna.
Gee, I appreciate you for that.
So since you know the history, why do you buy into the lie? Like, what do you get out of that? Does that make you feel like more with the diaspora?
Bro.
You want to be diasporan? You want to be a global citizen?
Giggity, calm down, man.
I'm calm. I'm very calm.
Giggity, calm down, man. You
Wiggity,
about
whack.
to giggity catch the Rex like the diggity dots effects.
Old
Giggity
nigga
green,
right there.
giggity green,
Old nigga.
giggity
That's
gr-
old nigga
giggity
talk
gorilla.
right there.
Nigga, I'm old. Nigga, I don't give a fuck. That's one of the problems we got with our culture now.
Yeah,
Ain't no
that's true.
respect for the elders and shit.
That's true, but the elders have to know when they're wrong. So I just want to come on and just say that, man. You're wrong about that.
Look, all I
Stop
can say
saying we
is-
don't have culture. Stop saying we don't fight back. Because I remember
This is
your
the shit
last
here,
show.
G.
I didn't say we don't fight. I didn't say we didn't fight back.
You alluded to that, and you're like
man,
that.
bro,
You
you don't
use
listen-
that dog
You
test a
ain't
little
listen-
too much.
You're not
use that
listening
dog
to. You're not
test a
listening
little
to
too
my
much.
shows, bro. You just skimming through them, bro.
Oh, yeah, because I get busy. I'm listening,
Exactly.
but I'm
So,
not
yeah.
listening. So,
It's
but
like,
you
it's
did
like
allude
Jay-Z
to
said,
something.
you don't listen to
calling
rap
them out.
music. You just skim through it.
Yeah, because he ain't talking about shit. He Caribbean too. But here we go, man.
I'll holler at you later, bro. Go ahead, do your do, man.
I'm about to leave a second. Don't run me off like that. Don't drop me. All I'm gonna say is, man, I understand your generation has this affinity for the diaspora and this global one blackness, but it doesn't exist, and it may never exist in our lifetime. So stop wasting your time. That's all I'm gonna say. But love you, man.
Bro. I'll holler at you. Huh?
Love.
Peace.
Pragmatic process, a dot, stay wildin'. Your man, sort don't mean jack to me. This nigga he constantly talk about I'm Caribbean, man. You know what I'm saying? Yo, my fucking great parents is sharecroppers. You know what I'm saying? I got pictures. Fuck is wrong with this nigga? You know what I mean? I'm Caribbean. This has made a whole case for Americans, but I'm Caribbean. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? He have something else. We don't know his age. We don't know what the fuck he's black and mixed with whatever, but he calling somebody else Caribbean, nigga. You ain't FBA, nigga. You ain't foundational black American,
Man,
nigga.
leave that dude alone, man. Leave that motherfucker alone,
He
man.
could look Saturday, nigga. It's going down, nigga. You want to come at the guard? I'm there, and I don't run from trolls, nigga. Okay. Both my parents slave black,
Man,
nigga.
this shit should have ended an hour and 30 minutes ago. But thank you for dropping by, Marcus, man. You always
No doubt.
keep the shit. I'm gonna come tomorrow, and but actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna truncate the bottom portion of this video, man. I'll leave it on because I want it to be steady, and the theme to not deviate from the purpose. Because I want people to be able to go back and look at this and see, in a successive fashion, the argument being made by Tommy Shelby in Dark Ghettos. You know what I'm saying? And we kind of deviated from that.
Yeah,
but,
we got off of that. Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, the show tonight was about justice and what justice requires for black folks. And a lot of times when we talk about black people, we just like to make moral arguments based on common sense about why they are where they are. And we typically don't take stock of institutions, history, and structures. We just make these common sense or folk wisdom kind of arguments about why people are where they are. And, when it comes to being sophisticated, that's just not enough, man. Using Judeo-Christian morality to try to explain where people at. That shit it's not enough, man.
Right.
It's not going to cut the mustard, man. And I'm just tired of, you know what I love about your commentary, Marcus, man, you give everybody hell, and that's the shit I do. If your argument is weak, it is what it is. Even if mine is weak, like I don't have a problem with listening to a Reyes. If he can correct me in something, okay, then I stand corrected in what he's saying. I don't have a problem with that shit. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, you know, I enjoy your commentary because I don't think you give anybody any leeway, and you shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? I'm the same fucking way. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it is what it is, man. But I'm eating some good ass pizza right now. And people done came, man, and delivered my food, huh?
You got shrimp on that? Shrimp?
No, hell no. I don't put shrimp on pizza, dog. No.
I was just asking.
No, sir.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, man, so tomorrow I'll come on and I'll deal with the subject matter of discrimination. Because some people think discrimination is inherently wrong. I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to discriminate against the ugly bitch if a pretty bitch trying to give me the pussy.
Right. We aren't.
I'm just going to be honest.
Black people aren't discriminating enough. And that kind of jumps off of what we just talked about. We are too inclusive, while others are not as inclusive. We are thinking being inclusive is going to ingratiate us with other groups, and that's not what happens, right? So that is one of our great faults. You know, and I'm going to, like, this Saturday, my stream is called Black Man, You Ain't Got No Friends. You don't have no friends, you know, and that's, I think that Black men in particular are struggling with the idea that all these groups, all these different labels, all of this other shit, like, you know, we're struggling with trying to be inclusive and trying to be included in everybody else's movement, and not having, we're men without a country.
For sure,
okay,
for sure. Yeah, that's exactly what we are. We're men without a land of our own. But look, before we even get out of this motherfucker, bro, I want to give a shout out to some good folks, man, who who helped contribute to tonight's, little fun, bro. Shout out to Chris, Greg Wilson, Broman 3, Samuel Calvin, Mackenzie Kendall, Corbett Goodwin, Aaron Smith, Black Mind. Shout out to Craig Jefferson again. I think he hit it up twice. But no, he hit it up once. But shout out to y'all good gents, man. Appreciate, your support, man. It's always love, man. And I enjoy doing this shit. Sometimes it's rough for me to get started, but once I get going, man, I'm into it. You know what I mean? So, much love, man. And, I ain't always right. And the people who I read ain't always right. But, it is what it is, man. We keep having fun, man, and keep talking and keep reasoning, and hopefully we'll get closer and closer to the truth, man, to figure out what to do, man, how to get ourselves in a better position. You know what I'm saying? Then having our legs open, you know what I'm saying, wide open, getting hit with no Vaseline. That ain't cool right there. Nah, ain't cool.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I know it sounds really graphic, but getting fucked, and it's better to be fondled than fucked. But you know what I'm saying. Right now, we just getting the fool. Everybody telling us fuck you. Know what I mean? So
right.
That's the point. You know what I'm saying? So we ain't even got allies in our own families no more. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers done made this some gender shit now. Like when did like America become a gender discriminatory society? Like this shit, man, come on, man. I would show picture after picture of white woman, man. They ankles fat. They faces fat. They look healthy as a motherfucker. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay. You don't see them in no shabby ass clothes and shit. They looking like they all squared away. They getting 3 hots. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is, bro. But anyway, man, I'm about to sign off, man. Good love, good respect, man. Be cool, man, and I'll holler at y'all tomorrow, man. Yeah.
No doubt. I will fuck with you tomorrow, and of course, Saturday Night Live, baby. You know what I'm saying?
For sure, man. For sure. Usual. I always, if I don't get on your show, I at least be spectating.
That's true. Yeah, I see you. All right, man.
Y'all be good, man. I'll holler at y'all later, man. Next time.
No doubt. Shout out to Reyes.
Shout out to the unknown age Negro.
Right.